republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing.
We have somebody.
Oh, who's it?
I just think we want to ask that we as commissioners and staff and people who have attended tonight just recognize the duties we have to consider the neighborhoods as a total, and best wishes for that as part of the city, part of the state, and part of the United States of America.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, roll call.
That same person doesn't have it. Well, we know. Suds? Mr. James?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Reinhardt?
Here.
Mr. O'Halloran? And
Chairwoman Casey is here.
Okay, so we're missing John.
He confirmed he would be attending.
He will be attending.
Oh, okay,
Probably
okay.
late, like last time. And then
So,
Rob, right?
yes, so we're going to have a full commission here today. While we're waiting for everyone to be here, let's continue with,
I move that we excuse Raj Chahal.
oh, is Raj excused?
I don't know, is he going to be here or not?
I didn't hear that he was not.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, so we have the roll call. Oh, okay, let me proceed with the declaration of commission procedures. Okay. Hearing procedures. Public hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the commission directs all activity during the hearings. All comments shall be addressed to the commission. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Applicants will be allotted up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals following staff presentation of the item. Other speakers will be given up to 4 minutes, and the applicant is allotted up to 5 minutes for rebuttal of comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the close of the public hearing, although the commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Special procedures and time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. Appeal of commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. Okay. All right. So I declare the procedures. So do we have any continuances or exceptions to the items on today's agenda? Anybody? No? Okay, then let's move on to consent calendar. Is it okay to proceed even though we're still hoping to have Commissioner Wang?
I don't believe he's attending tonight.
7, oh, okay.
Just turned 7.
Oh,
Okay.
my clock here says 7:04. Is this wrong?
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock right now.
Oh, okay, I apologize. Okay, if we could make this, get the clock here fixed, that would be great. Because I don't want to, I don't want to be.
Chair Casey, excuse me, under the continuance and exceptions, if you could just explain to the audience that we do allow the audience to request items to be taken out of order under that item, so I'm not sure everyone knows that.
Items taken out of order?
No, number
to
4,
continue.
that applicants or anyone else can request that an item be taken out of order that's on the agenda, so you can offer that to the audience.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so continuances and exceptions means that an applicant or for any of the items on the agenda today may request the item to be continued for future meeting or taken out of the agenda. So if any of the applicants would like to do that, please speak up now.
I'd like to make a motion.
Seeing that there's no continuances and exceptions, I'd like to move on to the consent calendar. The motion that you said you wanted to make, maybe we can do that on the public hearing items.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so would any of the commissioners would like to take any of the items off of the consent calendar? Otherwise, does anyone want to make a motion to approve
I
the
would like to take item 5A.
5A? Okay, minutes from August 9th. Okay,
Oh,
anything?
I'm sorry, 5B. Excuse me.
Oh, 5B, okay. Yeah. Okay, do we have a motion to approve items 5A, C, and D?
All right, I'd like to make a motion for items 5A, C, and D to be approved.
Any seconds?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's discuss item 5B.
I would just like to ask staff to explain that one a little better. I just see seeing above ground 12,000 gallon diesel fuel tanks. Yeah, I just want to understand that a little better.
So the applicant is proposing to install a total of 6 backup generators at a recently approved data center. And these are configured as a pair of 3 stacked units. So each stacked unit consists of 1 generator with a 500 US gallon base tank on top of another generator with a 12,000 US gallon base tank. And pursuant to the fire department, combustible liquid stored in above-ground storage tanks storing more than or equal to 12,000 gallons or more are subject to planning commission review or approval of use permit.
Okay. And I think I've understood that because that type of thing has come before us. Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any motion to approve consent calendar item 5B?
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 5B.
Any
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to.
Commissioner, I'm
yes.
sorry, Chair Casey, just want to mention that the items on consent are final unless there's an appeal of any of the items within 7 calendar days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item set for hearing. Now, we have several large items on the agenda today. So may I ask how many in our audience, how many people in the audience are here for item 6A, the senior center? Okay. How many people are here for item 6D, the historic preservation ordinance? Okay, none. Okay, so we have a lot of people who wish to speak for on item 6A. Now, I think, yes,
I'd like to make a motion to move up 6B and C in deference. I don't believe these items will be nearly as long as the other items, and it could be good, efficient to get those done. Go over those first.
any seconds?
I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so let's start with item 6B. Would you like to read the item?
I can read that out.
Thank you.
This is at 1045 Live Oak Avenue, where a residence to 8,221 square foot lot is proposing to asking for a variance to allow an extension of an existing 7-foot fence, which is a 6-foot with a 1-foot lattice, extended to approximately 13 feet along the north property line.
Okay, can we have the staff report, please? Okay.
We're having IT assistance right now, but I can proceed with the verbal presentation if you wish.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, thank you. Chair Casey and members of the commission, the applicant at 1045 Live Oak Drive once previously requested and received a variance to place a fence along a side property line, and that area was approved in order to expand the yard area. Our normal requirement for the side yards on street-facing setbacks is 15 feet, and the area was allowed to encroach a 6-foot-high fence. Presentation.
Okay. C.
One more.
There it is.
All right, there we go. Okay, thank you, Rosa. Okay, so here's the location. It is fronting 2 different public streets. And the arrow indicates where the fence line was originally approved. There's a pool area there, and it was indicated to be proposed for safety purposes. The lot's very large, 8,221 square feet. The fence has been placed here for a number of years, in excess of 10, and so it has not presented any kind of problem. And the applicant wishes to just bring that extension down several more feet, and it would line up with the front elevation. And so that extension, again, is out of the site triangle that is recommended by the city's traffic engineering division. It's been confirmed through that the extension would not impede any site visibility on either corner, and would provide additional usable yard space for the property owner. And so, again, we've confirmed this. One of the statutes for the variance is that it's necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the property rights of the applicant, and this obviously would make more sense to incorporate that additional yard area extending off the existing fence line. And so for that reason, staff is supporting the request, and we're asking that you approve this through a resolution and allow the extension of approximately 13 feet, and that it not extend beyond the front elevation of the existing dwelling. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation, answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have a question to the staff? Okay, would the applicant like to speak on this request?
Thank you. Only if there are any questions. Basically, we have a pool. Push here. Is that working? Sorry about that. In 99, I applied for a variance to be allowed to put a pool in the side yard, and the existing fence was already there, the 7-foot fence. It just didn't go far enough, so we had to move it about 5 feet. It went from the upper building edge that you see, we had to move it a few feet. What I didn't foresee was that putting the pool in like that, we'd have almost no deck area. So you can only put a few chairs around the pool, because the back number 4 up there in the upper left, I think it's a 4, is the pool equipment, and there's a hot tub up there, and there's stairs that come out of the house and so on. And now I have 2 teenagers at Santa Clara High School bring over all their friends, and there's just no room. And we don't use the side yard at all. So, and my wife won't go out to the pool because there's no shade at all. So I have a pine tree there. We'd have a shady area adjacent to the pool and yard that I'm not using now. And I think it'll actually make the property more attractive, because I put in a whole series of Italian cypress. Those are the numbered circles you see up above, and I'd continue that line down. And the city asked me to take a hedge that's along the side of the house and transplant that in front of the fence facing Live Oak Drive, which is down below on this image that you're looking at. So it'll probably be more attractive than it is now, and also it won't be a yard that I only visit to mow it, because no one uses it currently. So that's the request. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would the member of the public like to speak on this matter? Okay, none. Would you like to rebut on nobody who spoke? No. Okay, so motion to close public hearing.
I move that we close public hearings.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, where does that
Aye.
noise come from?
I would like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that we adopt the resolution approving the variance to allow extension of an existing 7-foot fence on the property located at 1045 Live Oak Drive, Santa Clara.
Second that?
Okay, any discussions?
I would like to just confirm with staff that there was notice given and we had no neighbors make any statements.
Yes, the property was posted with our new public outreach policy signs, and then there was the requisite 300-foot notice as well, and there was no objections to the request.
Okay, any more discussions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to item 6C. Would Commissioner O'Halloran like to announce the item 6C? Thank you.
Item C is at a residence at 659 Robin Drive, a 7,175 square foot lot. And the owner, the applicant, is asking for a variance to allow an existing 268 square foot one-car garage in conjunction with the 614 square foot proposed addition of the master bedroom, including office and new laundry. I think the primary deal, I guess staff can go over this, is that requesting just to have a single car garage.
Thank you. Can we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Sorry about the technical difficulties over here. The request is by the applicant and owners is for a variance to allow an existing 268 square foot one-car garage where 2 is required in the R16L single-family zoning district in conjunction with a proposed 614 square foot proposed addition, which would include a master bedroom and bathroom and an office and a new laundry closet to an already existing 1,669 square foot single-family residence. Like that. This? Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. All right, here's the project site. The property in question is zoned R16L Single Family Zoning District, and the general plan land use designation is very low residential density, and the surrounding properties are the same. You can see the home on the left there. Why do I keep doing that? Okay. So it's a little bit difficult to see the site plan in this slide, so I apologize, but the existing and proposed site plan is here. The addition is primarily at the rear of the house, and you'll see in the next slide that the actual front elevation of the house doesn't change from the existing and proposed with the addition. On the north side, so if you're looking left of the site plan, the setback is currently 5 feet 2 inches, and on the right side, it's currently, the southern side of the property line is currently 8 foot 7 inches. The single-family zoning district requires a 5-foot setback, and so you'll see in a minute some of the constraints in meeting that 2-car covered parking requirement. So here's the existing floor plan, and you'll see at the north property line to the rear of the property, that's where the addition is going to be. It's currently a 2-bedroom house with a 1-bathroom and a 1-car garage. Now, as you can see in the arrow here, this is the 614-foot addition that will include the master bedroom, the master bathroom, and then a small office as well as a laundry closet. And you can see on the front elevation here that there is no change to the front elevation, as the majority of the addition is at the rear of the property. Now, in terms of the variance requests, the request, obviously, as discussed, is to allow a one-car garage in conjunction with the 614 square foot proposed addition. And in terms of the site constraints, and in terms of justification for the variance, the lot width is currently 56 feet, where we require a minimum 60 foot in the R16L zoning district. And then, as I stated before, you need a 5-foot side setback. So if we look at the south property line where the garage is, you currently have an 8-foot, 7-inch setback. That leaves very few options to accommodate a 2-car garage. So the applicant had discussed this in detail with staff, and we looked at several ways to accommodate a 2-covered parking garage. And the only ways that it could be accommodated were either to seek a variance to go into the side setback, as well as encroaching significantly into the living room of the home, rearranging the entire design of the home. You would have to move the front door. You would have to remove the fireplaces currently within the living room. So it would cause a significant hardship and burden to the property owners to accommodate the 2-car garage. And just in terms of neighborhood compatibility, there are 32 properties on Robin Drive. 24 of these properties have a 1-car garage, so it is a very typical pattern of this neighborhood. 19 of those homes have 3 bedrooms or more, 13 of which maintain the 1-car garage, and 21 homes have 2 bathrooms or more. And I think the staff report said bedrooms, but that was a typo. It should be bathrooms. And 18 of those have a 1-car garage or more. So in terms of the actual addition itself, it aside from the 1-car parking, 2 covered parking space requirement, it meets all the other zoning and policy guidelines that we have within the city. So the recommendation today is to adopt a resolution to approve the variance to the section 18.12.120A of the city code to allow the reduction in the required covered parking space in conjunction with the development of the 614 square foot addition. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Okay, questions for the staff. Commissioner O'Halloran.
Yes, more out of curiosity, with so many that are single-car garages right now, would that imply that the code came in after these houses were built, so there's kind of a grandfather situation?
Yes, that is correct. So the homes would have been built prior to this requirement.
Okay, and so now they're coming forward with this, so looking to codify. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Chahal.
Just a question. If the applicant would have wanted to build an accessory dwelling unit, would they have required the second garage, car garage, like 2-space car garage? Just a curiosity question.
Well, so I should have mentioned here earlier in my presentation that in 1998, I believe it was, not the current owners, but a previous owner had a 484 square foot addition to the house. Now, you don't need to do the 2 covered parking spaces if it's under 500 square feet. And so the options the property owner had were either to do a 16 square foot addition, because it's capped at 500, or to do the 2 covered parking spaces. In terms of the accessory dwelling unit, there wouldn't be a requirement for that accessory dwelling unit, but there would be still a requirement for a 2 covered parking space for the main house. And the property owners looked at that as an option, but they have very young kids, and they wanted to make sure that the bedrooms were within the main house for what they're using their home for.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay. Would the applicant like to speak?
I should just note that they're currently not here because they thought they would be later on the agenda. So.
Oh, okay. What, what do you recommend that we do then?
Here's my question again, was this noticed and were there any neighborhood comments?
No comments have been received.
No comments.
Oh, sorry, comments have been received, 3 letters, they're part of your packet. And there's letters of support from the neighbors neighboring the property.
Thank you.
You have the option of taking public testimony. However, if it's the inclination of the commission to deny this application, I would strongly recommend continuing it to later in the evening so that the applicant has an opportunity to speak. But if you want to open the public testimony now, there are no comments, and you're inclined to approve, I doubt the applicant will object.
Okay. Let's open the hearing to the public. Would the public like to speak on this matter?
It's very, very difficult to hear your comments in the back, so if you could get closer to your microphones, especially the young lady at this desk, it's very difficult to hear you when you're talking. My question is, if everybody's got one-car garages, and why are you bother even using anybody's time? It looks like these even shouldn't come here. Why are you doing this? If you're going to just pass them anyways, and everybody's got one-car garages, why don't you just change the whole street to one-car garages and forget the two-car requirement? I mean, was there a comment that made something about grandfather? There was some kind of comment that you said, Mike, that I couldn't even hear what it said. So if you could repeat whatever that comment was, it might make sense. But right now, if out of 30, whatever it was, 20-something of them already have one car and they're all approved, and this probably is going to get approved too, which it probably should if it's part of what's in there, but.
Well, that was my question, was there some similarity, not that that's a legal issue right now, but that was kind of the circumstance that you're raising.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's running rampant in the whole area, and
Or it had run rampant at one time.
So just to provide a little bit of clarification, to make more sense a little bit, the R16L zoning district covers several single-family homes across the city of Santa Clara, and so that requirement for a 2 covered parking space is very reasonable in many areas of the city. Now, for this particular this particular street, these homes were built at the same time, and they all seem to be built with the 1-car garage in the same sort of pattern. So, you know, maybe it does seem a little bit odd that, you know, each of these houses would have to either, you know, seek a variance or a separate accommodation to that requirement. But we're only talking about, you know, 32 homes across the city. This isn't a typical characteristic of most of the homes in Santa Clara.
So were they built with 1-car garages? Is that?
That's
okay,
right,
all right,
yeah.
that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Probably if you would have started with that, that would have helped.
I apologize that you
Thank you
couldn't
so
hear
much.
me.
Would anyone else in the public like to speak? Okay, motion to close public hearing.
Make that motion. Close
Thank
the
you.
public hearings.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I can make a motion to approve the requested variance for section 18.12.030D and approve this thing.
I second that motion.
Any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Yes.
Oh, I'll just note for the chair, just for the reminder that the motion will be approved in 7 days if there's no appeal.
Okay, all right, thank you. Oh, yes, Commissioner Chahal.
I have a question, like, can Planning Commission make a motion to avoid in future, to make it easy for the resident, that all 32 houses on that street can have a single-car garage, even they expand more than 500 square feet? That can make it easy for the future applicants, they don't need to come over here.
Certainly, that's what we call a zoning regulation. You would do that by making a recommendation to the city council that they amend the zoning ordinance to exempt that street from the 2-car parking requirements. And then if the city council passed an ordinance and did a first and second reading and conducted a public hearing, then they would only need 1 parking space.
So we wouldn't have to put that on a future agenda?
Oh, yes, you would, absolutely. That would have to be noticed as a public hearing, as a new ordinance. Yeah, I mean, you certainly can't do it tonight, if that was your question. I misunderstood.
So if I may request the staff to put that resolution for this particular street so that,
Commissioner Shahal, I would, maybe, if you want to discuss it, we can agendize that. I just want to bring up that we are in the midst of a zoning code update, and that is one of the issues that we will be addressing is existing one-car garages, since it does come up. And that certainly is a recommendation to add to the changes that we can include. So similar to what's on the agenda tonight regarding additional green infrastructure measures that will go into the climate action plan, we can also have this on record as being one of your contributions to the zoning code update. So we can agendize that for the next meeting.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I can't remember if we excused Commissioner Wang.
Yes. Oh, didn't we?
Okay.
I move that we excuse Commissioner Wang.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. All right, would Commissioner O'Halloran like to announce item 6A?
Yes, item 6A is on El Camino Real. It's a 2.74 acre project site, which is comprised of 2 parcels between between McCormick and Scott, or Los Padres Drive, and it's the applicant is Summerhill Apartment Community, and they've asked for a mitigated declaration and approval of a rezoning from the current commercial to CC to planned development to allow the development of a 4-story mixed-use development.
Thank you. Can we have the staff report, please?
Yes. Can you hear me? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, member of the Planning Commissions. Okay. Got a few slides here, so I'm going to try to go through it fairly quickly. Closer. Okay. Better? Okay. The project came before the planning commissions and city councils earlier this year. The project was presented at the planning commissions on January 25th, 2017, as a mixed-use apartments with retails on the ground floor, 10,000 square feet of retail space, and a 5-story building overall. There was a planning commission's recommended approval to the city council, and at the city council on March 7, 2017, city council denied the proposal with oppositions from the community on the 5-story height, additional traffic, potential traffic from future residents, not enough retail, lack of retail frontage along Anna Drive. There's not enough community benefits, and the community expressed interest in senior projects and affordable housing projects. The applicant revised their project, came back with the new applications, and the proposed entitlement today before you is to approve it a rezone from community commercials, CC, to planned development to allow the senior mixed-use development consisting of 17,909 square feet of commercial floor area, 151 senior apartment units, 5,775 square feet of community amenities, and 10,010 square feet of active community space, and 3,495 square feet of open plaza with outdoor seats. And a unique proposal of a 1,220 square foot space for community meeting hub, or alternative options of having it as a part of the retail. And this is 1,220 square feet of the 17,909 proposed square feet of commercial area. And also the adoptions of the M&D. For those who are not familiar with the site, this is a 2.74 parcels. There's actually 2 parcels that's going to be merged through a lot line adjustment. And that was approved at the subdivisions committee on July 18 of this year. The project is located north of the Santa Clara Town Center, borders with Anna Drive to the south and El Camino Real to the north. It has Adjacent to it is Chase Bank to the right, and Western Motel to the left. And just to the southwest of this is a multifamily residential PD land use. The current retails, some of them are already vacant from this site, is Academy for Salon Professionals, Commer Bicycles, Mayuri Indian Cuisine, and I think Verizon is the only occupant right now on the site. Zoning districts is, again, city CC, community commercial, allows a variety of commercial usage, but it doesn't allow the residential or the combinations of commercials and commercials and residential. So therefore, that's part of the premise of the PD request, to allow the mix of the use and unique design features. Surrounding the zoning district here is CC community commercials to the west and south, and there's a mix of residential type, multifamily residential, the PD that I mentioned earlier, to the southwest, and duplex following that across Anna Drive, and single family as well as R3 25D, and CT with heavier commercial use to the west. General plan designations is regional mixed use. This is the highest intensity land use for residentials and retail. It calls for the residentials, density range is 37 to 50 dwelling units per acre, and a minimum requirement for commercial is 0.15 FAR. That equates to 17,904 square foot for this site. So the senior component, a little brief on this, is there's no limitations on the density range per the general plan. Discretionary policies 5.5.1-P2 basically states that a project with 100% senior housing units, provided that any increased density is compatible with the neighborhoods and providing amenities. So also, this is proposing at 151 units or 55 dwelling units density per acre. That's also utilizing the discretionary policies for being close to transit within a quarter mile of transit. The senior housing component is going to be at market rate, and the leasing restricted age is 55 years of age and older. The age restriction is going to be conforming to the state and federal civil code. Conditions C23 through C25 in the conditions of approval were added to limit the senior use. Okay. The retail component, that was increased in response to the community comments that there were lack of retails in this area. So they increased it to 17,909, which meets the FAR minimum requirement. And again, the unique proposal of that 1,220 square foot of community meeting hub, whether the commissions or community wants to do that or a retail. The retail frontage on Anna Drive is also being added. It was just El Camino retail before. Now there's a pedestrian connections that goes along the Chase side, leading to the additional retail spaces along Anna Drive, and a new second open space with outdoor seatings. Parking, it is parked at 277 parking spaces is going to be provided in the 5-level parking garage and service parking lot. So clarifications from the staff report, it reads a 1.8 ratio, parking ratio. That's overall. That includes residentials and retail. The residential component alone is 174 spaces, which is about 1.15 ratios. If you include the 10% guest parking, which is 17, that's 1.26 parking ratio. 1 parking spaces per units, and the project is going to propose the second parking space as an unbundle. There are 86 parking spaces available for the retail. That's parking at 1 per 200 square feet. That reads 16,990 because it's excluding the trash area. Okay, and then 25 EVC or electrical vehicle charging stations will be installed with 11 turnkey and 14 prep for future EVC. And 13 secure bicycle parkings will be in a bicycle locker room, and 14 bicycle racks will be available on the lobby and frontage of Anna and El Camino Real. So with the parking ratios at 1.26, there was a similar senior housing projects on 100 North Winchester that had a market study that also support a similar parking ratio at 1.14. Also, just the nature of the senior housing and the proximity to other shopping, the large shopping center, the demand for the parking would be less. Just overall site access and circulations here. The two driveway entrance on El Camino Real is how you would access the site in the parking garage for the residential and the retail. So both entrances are both two-ways entry. You can go in and out on both. The residential parking is going to be gated. It's on the second floor, so off ground floor is going to be guest parking and retail parkings. There's also traffic calming concepts proposed by the applicant for Anna Drive to slow down the traffic that you see now, and a community has expressed, to discourage driveways and encourage any method to calm traffic down on Anna Drive. When you come out of the intersection from McCormick and Anna, there tends to be speeding zones in that area. So traffic calming include bulb out and crosswalk across Anna and Block Drive. Suddenly it doesn't work anymore. Sorry about that. Okay. Thank you. And compliance with CEQA, this project conducted a mitigating negative declarations, M&D, and it was circulated for a 30-day review period because it has the Caltrans State Highway, El Camino Real, in front of it. So it circulated for them too. There's no significant impact with mitigating measures identified in the MMRP. And the traffic operations finds that there's no significant impacts to the level of service. AM peak, the trip analysis shows there's actually just a small 7 trips increase in the AM peak hours, and actually 26 fewer trips in the PM peak hours. The previous proposal with just the regular apartments, that was showing at 23 fewer trip at the PM peak hours. So this is actually a little more than that. The project would also propose 20% reductions in VMT through TDM measures. One of the corrections on the TDMs in the staff report is the applicant is not proposing an Eagle Pass. They're proposing a free 1-month pass only for new residents. Some perspective here. The applicant will talk more about their design. Just want to show you in case you want to look, call back at these perspective here. This is what it looks on Anna Drive. This is the perspective from El Camino Real. This is the 3-story component from the right adjacent to the multifamily residential, which is also about 2 to 3-story height. And so this provide that transitions on that end. There's also a section view, just to see how the 5-level garage is being wrapped by the first 4-story height building. Okay. So at the time of the staff report preparations, we did not receive comments, but we certainly did after, within the past few days. We received 21 emails. Okay, sorry, here. I skipped one slide. Going back to actually the two outreach meetings that the applicant hosted at the Senior Center. One was on June 22nd, 2017. Approximately 15 people attended, and we get mostly support comments. Did not get any oppositions. They supported the senior residential's component, the drop down of the four-story to the four-story buildings and additional retail space and interactions with the town center and Anna Drive retail. On August 8th, the 17 attendees attended the meeting. And same thing echoes the support for the pedestrians connections, the new open space on Anna Drive. Yeah, and the community appreciate the community meeting hub provisions that the applicant provided. Okay, since then, we received 21 emails, 9 of which support the projects and 12 oppose the project. The support comments included the senior use, added retail site improvements, proximity to transit and shopping center, as well as adding on to the senior, or addressing the senior housing need. And the opposition's comments just regarding to mass and scale, senior market rate is not affordable. They rather see affordable housing alternative or just retail only. Additional traffic impacts is still an issue to some of the community members, and then senior age restrictions. Okay, so just considerations, and just summing it up is, this is changed from regular apartments units to senior apartment, 55 plus, eliminating the 5th story, which is, a lot of people were happy with that. An increase in commercial area to meet the FAR, not including any amenities, that's just commercial space, and adding it onto the Anna Drive as well. Santa Clara Community Meeting Hub, that's something that is unique proposal. And then there's the public pedestrian connections to the open space and the retails on Anna Drive. TDM plans measures and less peak trips with new use like the senior projects and the traffic calming concept. So with all that, staff recommend approval of the rezones from CC to PD, community commercials to planned development, and the adoptions of the MND and MMRP. That concludes staff presentations. The applicant is here to also present to you, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have a question to the staff? Okay, let's go one by one. Commissioner Kelly.
Okay, I have a couple questions for staff. First off, one of the letters mentioned age differences going from 55 to 62. Are the number of the required parking spaces, do the studies say we need more parking at age 55 than if we put the age restriction at age 62?
Are you talking about the traffic impact with this? Or
The study that you mentioned regarding senior housing, number of parking spaces required, is it based on age 55?
I'm not sure on the 100.
55 and over, okay. And then I noticed on the comments from the VTA that they would like to see providing free discounted passes on a continuous basis. On some of the other projects along the El Camino, are they also providing free transit passes for the people that want them?
We have routinely incorporated that as a condition, but normally it's on the signing of a lease for a one-year term. Some do have recurring, such as like 900 Kylie has it for each annual renewal of the lease they would provide, and that's of almost 600 units. So it depends upon the project. With the ownership, it's a little bit more difficult because of the HOA, and so it's not usually done, but for the rental situations, we do have a combination of the passes either in perpetuity to be offered or on a one-time basis.
Okay, and then of the projects that have recently been approved along the El Camino, how many are age-restricted right now?
I believe there's four
There's four.
currently. The Presidio, and then there's one further down. There's one near Lafayette, and then there's two new ones.
Okay, and they all have minimum age of 55 and above?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then there was which one is it? There was this email here
Sorry, okay.
regarding, let's see, where's it?
Commissioner Kelly, just have to specify that Steve reminded me that the Presidio is affordable, but it's not senior. So we have three.
It's affordable?
Yeah.
3 is seniors?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then the email from the Associate Transportation Planner notates the mitigated negative declarations failed to address cultural resources. What is that?
Potential, either any findings of Native Americans, archaeological
So
items,
basically-
or any historical feature. And they were speaking specifically towards the Western Motel, and want to claim that that is no longer historical. The only history from the previous DPR that we have on that site is the sign is the only historical feature that still remains, the Western Motel sign.
Okay. All right, and I think that was it for my questions to staff. All right.
Just want to clarify for your first questions, the previous market study for that 100 North Winchester was assessed at the 55 plus
It was
age.
55
Yeah.
plus. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner O'Halloran.
Yes, there were certainly a lot of emails on it, and both of them focused on, or a lot of them focused on the senior housing definition and label, both pro and against. And one of the emails I thought really was hitting a good point as to, is that really something, is that an enforceable item? And what happens, they used certain examples, which I think were good examples. I guess these are apartments.
Correct.
And they could not, there'd be some enforcement for not allowing them to sublease them to somebody less than 55? How would that be enforced, or can that be enforced?
May I answer this one? Under federal law, there's a requirement that a survey be conducted by the owner of the apartment every 2 years at least. Both the city and individual members can ask to see a summary of this survey, and there are enforcement mechanisms if it turns out that there's inadequate attention being paid to maintaining the requisite age requirements. This senior housing is being proposed as a PD rezone. It will become the zoning for the property. If the city learns that the zoning for the property is not being complied with in the future, it becomes a code enforcement matter. If they're not complying with their obligation to maintain the housing as seniors, we can cite them and fine them $1,000 a day until they comply. So it becomes a code enforcement matter. There is a mechanism for the city to enforce it. There are mechanisms for individual members of the public to enforce it because it becomes a violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act.
So there is a set penalty that would be?
Well, any violation of the municipal code can be prosecuted as a misdemeanor, or it can be brought as a civil penalty. They can be cited And the penalty for violating the municipal code is, you know, I forget how much for the first offense, but as of the third offense, it's $1,000 an offense, and you can cite them every day. So, yeah, there's definitely penalties. There's administrative penalties, civil and criminal, which we can bring against them if they are inclined to suddenly decide they don't want seniors there. They're also going to be recording a covenant against the property. I mean, the CC&Rs are recorded on the property, which will also restrict it to seniors only.
Okay, and so we can give the public an assurance that we can enforce that 55-plus requirement?
Absolutely, as long as it remains zoned PD. I mean, theoretically, you know, 100 years from now, the city could decide to rezone it something else, but if that's the zoning is enforceable like any zoning, just like you couldn't, you know, put up a steel mill on your home.
Thank you.
Okay, and there was a reference to a different code for 62 and over, or is that, just as an information item, is there something different if you're saying 62?
Under both federal law and state law, you have to choose either 55 and over or 62 and over for a senior housing development. Those are the only two categories that are allowed. This is an exception to the age discrimination laws. You know, you can't discriminate on race, religion, national origin, or age, but there's a big asterisk next to age. If you comply with all these requirements for senior housing, you can discriminate based on age. But you have to choose 55 and over or 62 and over. There are different requirements for the two. For 55 and over, the requirements are actually stricter. You have to have at least 35 units in the development, which this one does. There are certain width requirements for the entrances and the hallways. You have to have grab bars on all the hallways. I forget, but regardless, Summerhill will be required to comply with all of those requirements as a 55 and up development. They have the choice of whether they want to do 55 or 62, and they've selected 55.
Okay, again, though, going back to this letter, and I'm not sure what the legal basis is there's a question whether, when you said 55 plus, that only meant it had to be 80%, or is it, we can say it's 100%?
It's 100%. It has to be 100%.
To be 100%?
The writer of the letter correctly cited the federal law on senior housing, but we've got both a state set of laws and a federal set of laws. So now in some states with less regulation, you know, maybe Texas, only the federal law applies, and there you could do an 80% development. But here in California, we have an even stricter set of senior requirements under state law. And our state law does not allow 80%. You have to provide 100% senior housing. And again, if you don't comply with all of the requirements, it doesn't qualify as a senior housing development, and then you're just discriminating based on age, and it's illegal. So it would have to be 100% senior.
Okay. And our enforcement would be against whoever the property owner is, whether it's Summerhill or Summerhill
Absolutely.
sells to somebody else. Okay, another issue that's come up a couple of times is the parking and the number. I know we ended up with 1.26. Was that an exception that we're allowing to be lower than a standard? Okay.
Yeah, this will be part of the PD.
Okay, and
Standard.
and we're allowing it, or we're being proposed to allow it primarily because we feel that the seniors will be more likely to not drive, not have a car, I guess, and use a bus. Was that the?
I guess we will be allowing this based on the studies that we have, or this.
That's what the
traffic
planning
study.
department said, yeah, it's reasonable to have 1.26
Correct.
or 1.26, right?
Yeah.
And the, within it, I think, Steve, you left that could you go back to the last page at the bottom? And you talked about some of the fees. I just seen contributions to schools and parks. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What are they contributing to the parks and?
Yeah, I actually refer that to the applicant to,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
to know that.
And I think some of the other ones will come up about the traffic study and stuff. And, also just to clarify, when you talked about the community meeting hub of 1,200 square foot, is that within that 17,000, or would that be something that you'd add back to the 17,900?
It'll be of that
If we said we
17,000.
wanted it to be
So if you
retail.
want it as a retail, it'll be part of that 17,909.
So
If
that
you
number doesn't
don't-
go up?
Right. No, if you don't want it as a retail, then it's 1,220 of that will be community hub, meeting hub. Is
Okay,
that
I'm a little
clear?
confused. So we're saying we've got commercial area of 17,909, but 1,200 square feet of that could be this community hub?
Correct.
Okay, so it's actually, could be less than the 17,000? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chahal? Oh, Commissioner Jane.
Yeah, Steve, I know this is being rezoned to, well, first I want to disclose that I had a meeting with Summerhill, Elaine Breeze and Cynthia James and Joe Head. I've also met with the owner of the Mayuri restaurant. So, you know, up and down El Camino, people are always concerned that we're just doing everything PD. Okay, so I looked at the zoning codes, and it seems like there's a designation called transit-oriented mixed use, and I'm wondering why we didn't apply a more specific zoning to this than PD, which to me often seems like free license to do whatever you want. Do you have any comments on that? And then I have a number of other questions.
We did not compare it to the TMU, you will.
TMU, yeah.
In all the specifics. It was just, you know, I can look into that to see what is it not allowed, that kind of refer them to the PD route. I don't know the exact specific standards that it's not meeting, and that's why they're referring PD. Yeah, sure, if you can respond to that. 1 second.
Commissioner Jane, the TMU ordinance has a number of restrictions in it, and much like, say, like, as you heard, the R16L, you have to meet all of the requirements for the zoning code in order to get an approval. So in this case, instead of having the 2-car garages, we have a number of zoning restrictions that are required for the TMU approval. One is, I believe the maximum density is 25 units to the acre. This one is proposed at 55 because it's reflective of our general plan code that allows for, it's a regional mixed use, which is the highest density we have currently, except for in this in the specific plan areas. And then secondly, it's a senior housing project which allows no cap on the density. So those are that's one significant aspect. So therefore, it would automatically not comply with the TMU regulations. Also, there's a specified parking ratio in there, and I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a little bit higher than what I think it's 1.5 per unit. So it's a quarter of a parking space below that. Again, all of these things would require variances, and since a project with a number of variances, it kind of renders the zoning district moot or immaterial. So that's why we defer to the PD, because it allows more flexibility, and in light of our current general plan, we have to have really the site-specific developments are codified, like you said, based on the PD. So whatever is proposed is exactly what's going to be included in that PD permit. The PD rezoning is the PD permit, so for the project.
Okay, but they did sort of go with the cap. I mean, they went with the 50 units per acre plus the 10% density bonus.
Well,
So
not
they're-
really, because they were allowed that under they can use one discretionary project, and that is senior housing, and they're just using the 10%, but the 50 units is allowed under the regional mixed use already. So potentially, they can go up to the very high, which we have in other areas, which is about 100 units to the acre.
Well, you're saying with senior, there's no cap. They could go to 200
Yes,
if they wanted.
but because of what's happened in the past and the community sentiment, they're just complying with what's allowed under the regional mixed use. So they're not exceeding that limit that's allowed.
I see, okay. So the other, you know, I saw a number of comments, you know, 21 letters And the major concerns are traffic, the height of the project, and parking. That's what I culled from what I saw there. And and I read in the report that they're offering some improvements to the traffic lights. Can you elaborate as to what we're doing and what we're sort of what they're paying for, or?
Yeah. So this is one of the traffic department's conditions to synchronize the traffic light from McCormick, El Camino, and Los Padres in El Camino. Synchronizing it allows it to be smarter with the queue because it's a short distance between each other, and so they'll sync it so that they know how much are being queued up and then freed up the light when it's queued up. I don't know the cost, so I don't know what's that contribution is or that cost of that synchronized improvement, but that's the premise of the traffic improvement.
A number of people complained about the speed of cars on Anna Drive, and I'm wondering, are there traffic calming measures that are being taken for Anna Drive?
So it wasn't required by the traffic to do calming on Anna. This is all from the applicant proposing some concept to slow the traffic down on Anna, and that includes some of the bulb out. That's just basically kind of bottleneck the traffic down so it slows down, and propose a crosswalk on Block and Anna Drive to also just connect the pedestrians to the town center. One of the proposals that they had early on was to go directly from the pedestrian path on the left side or the right side of the projects next to Chase and goes directly to the driveway access to town center, but that was declined by the traffic engineer because that's a mid-block crossing, and so they had to move it down to Block Drive.
Okay. And I saw there that the applicant is paying for park fees. The Mitigation Fee Act, something like $3.1 million of park fees. But then somewhere in there, it said that they're not going to get credit for private park area, but it wasn't clear in there. Are they or are they not going to get the credit? Do you know?
Sure, they're not.
Yes, Commissioner Jane, they are not going to get credit because under the ordinance, it requires 3/4 of an acre of dedicated park space, plus I believe it's either 4 or 5 of the 8 elements that constitute park land. And so for that purpose, they will be paying fee only.
And that's certain?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Chahal.
I have a follow-up question regarding the senior housing age limit. So what happens, let's say there's a senior who leases the space, but his son who is 28, he's living with him.
Well, Commissioner Chahal, the federal and state statutes actually spell out in detail who can stay with a senior and for how long. It is, senior housing, but not everyone there is a senior. There's, qualified permanent residents, which is defined as, the spouse of the senior, or there's qualified health care providers. So honestly, I don't know offhand what happens when it's the 28-year-old and the senior leaves. I expect they can't stay, but I'd have to check the regulations to find out. All I can tell you is they have considered every eventuality such as that, and there's specific rules.
So they can stay basically with the senior?
They can stay with the senior.
The senior.
But I can try and check that while you all discuss. Okay. So the scenario is there's a 28-year-old staying with the senior and the senior leaves?
Anybody under, let's say somebody in working age, 55 can be working age too, but there another gentleman related to the senior who is staying, with, who is not 55, whether he's a son, brother, or
if the senior's still
wife.
there, they can stay.
I can add on to that too. Part of the applicant's justifications has a seniors operations on there. And from the applicants, the child of the tenants would need to be disabled or something in circumstances to be able to stay there. The other exception is the spouse. Spouse doesn't have age restrictions. Also, I want to add the counsel for the applicants is here, legal counsel. They can also help answer some of these questions. They're ready for it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, actually, that's an excellent point. The Summer Hills attorney, I'm sure, knows the answer to that question, and they'll be up here shortly.
Okay, thank you. I have several questions. Okay, so has there been any discussion on who will manage the community hub if they were to install one?
Yeah, so Summerhill will manage that.
So if somebody from the community wants to use the facility, they contact the management company?
So later, the applicant will talk more in details on the provisions, but essentially is free for nonprofit. But I'm not too sure about the details for anybody who wants to reserve. So they can talk more about that.
Okay, thanks. Now, you mentioned an interesting thing. When in the previous application, the PM peak hour traffic was supposed to go down with this project. Now it's going up, and it's kind of. Can you tell me why? I mean, it doesn't sound like.
I think you misunderstand the number when I say 26 instead of 23. That's 23 fewer for the previous apartment, regular apartment. This is 26 fewer previous proposal, sorry, and then the 26 fewer is for this proposed senior housing project. So
okay, so in both proposals, the traffic would have gone down?
Correct. Yeah, and
according
this
to
proposal is gone down 3 more.
Oh, got it, thank you. All right, let's see now. So, I think I understood from the discussions we just had that with this proposal to build senior housing, there is no limit to the number of housing units. There would be no limit to the housing unit according to the general plan. That's our general plan, right? That's why the only change that we're being asked to consider is the zoning change. So is this another situation where we have a mismatch between GP and zoning ordinance, or, but then before it wasn't senior housing that was being proposed, so.
I think what you're trying to say is the general plan doesn't cap the density limits of senior housing, and this zoning, the purpose of the zoning is not just for the seniors, for the mixed use, the senior or just residential component and retail to coexist on the same zoning. The general plan right now is regional mixed use, and because it's senior, it's just there's a factor of the density that we were talking about, and that there's no cap on that, and they're just trying to propose a density that is similar to the relating land use, which is regional mixed use. I hope that answered your questions.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to point out is that this project, as it is proposed, meets all of our general plan requirements. So there's a lot of concerns from the community about this project, but the project does meet the GP, which is, in my mind, a huge plus for the proposal. Let's see. There's another senior housing on El Camino near San Tomas. What is the resident, the parking ratio for that property? It's not very far from this proposal.
Yeah, I don't have that number with me right now, but you're probably referring to the Camino del Rey next to the creek
Yeah.
on El Camino Real. I can try to find that out if I can right now.
I can get you that. 48 units, only 36 parking spaces.
Oh, so it's even lower than what's being proposed. Thank you very much. Okay, and let's see. Oh, that's it for now. Okay. Anyone else have a? Okay, Commissioner Chahal.
As a disclosure, I did meet the applicant at one of the community events and also met several residents on this one. And one thing I noticed on the resolution, it says ownership involved on findings, on C, findings C. I don't think this ownership-based. On page 2 of 3, attachment 3. Oh, no. Sorry, attachment 4. On page 3, item C, it says high-quality home ownership opportunities in the city of housing stock. This is not an ownership, I think.
No, that's correct. This is not an ownership project.
Last
say
line of the item.
Attachment 4C findings?
BC. No, 1, 2, 4, 3, 3C.
It's page 66 of the packet.
Instead of home ownership, we might have said residential, would have been a better term.
Okay. Yeah, we can revise it to residential.
Change. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Commissioner Kelly.
Yeah, I just wanted to note, I also met with the applicant to see the changes to the development plans.
Okay, thank you. Okay, would the applicant,
I also wanted to make that comment too, that I had met with the applicant.
okay,
I did have one question.
thank you.
I think it'll come up with the applicant.
Excuse me, Commissioner, your microphone?
Oh, am I not? Okay. I just wanted to announce that I had also met with the applicant one morning. Was there comments from the police and fire about coverage of this unit? I probably maybe just missed it in the write-up.
No.
But it's just assumed that that will be covered through the property tax funding and?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, would the applicant like to present?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Elaine Breeze. We appreciate the opportunity to present to you tonight our revised mixed-use senior apartment project. I'm joined tonight by our project team, Studio T Square, Gazzardo Partnership Landscape Architects, and HMH Engineers. Tonight, I will review our community outreach since March 2017 and the design changes due to changing the project to senior apartments, and design changes in response to City Council and community feedback. And finally, the project's community benefits. It's not working. Oh, there goes, sorry. First, community outreach, staff summarized, but with our previous application, we did have 3 community meetings, and we met with the Casa Donna townhome owners as well over a 2-year period. You'll note it was a 500-foot radius. We noticed over 200 households. Our more recent outreach included 2 community meetings. We've met with over 25 community members individually as well, starting in May That radius for the neighborhood medians doubled to 1,000 feet, and over 400 households were noticed. You might have noticed the project signs on site as well. And as staff noted, the attendees were very happy with the significant changes that we'd made in our responsiveness. The project changes that we have made since March 2017 in response to City Council and community feedback are significant and were summarized in our letter. The biggest change was the senior apartments, eliminating the 5th story. We increased the commercial area. We are offering a community meeting hub. We added a pedestrian connection. We added a second plaza, reduced the average unit size. We've added more sustainability and TDM features, and there will be also less PM trips, as discussed previously. Once we decided to go senior housing, I want to give you a little background. We wanted to make sure this was the right site to locate this and make sure it was designed appropriately. We had a market study that analyzed it, and the site, as you can imagine, rated exceptionally high. I mean, you can walk to everything: 2 grocery stores, 2 pharmacies, restaurants, retail, services. You're within a mile of the senior center. You can walk to the bus stop, and you're within 3 miles of Kaiser. So again, it rated very high. And that same information study gave us recommendations on amenities, services, parking, unit design, and so forth. We did hire outside counsel, and he's prepared to speak maybe in the rebuttal to answer some of the questions, but also really to ensure for us that we were meeting all the state and federal laws regarding senior housing. We also engaged a senior apartment operator to advise us as well. I would like to quickly highlight the changes. Use the screen. I'm going to run out of time. This is a problem. Okay. That we've made as part of the senior aspect. First, we doubled the club room size and we relocated the fitness. People are going to spend more time, more activities on site. We redesigned the whole pool courtyard. It now has a lap pool, exercise, shade areas, putting green, game areas, and a lot more hangout spots. We looked at, on the left, we have a community gardening area, and the right, we added a dog run and relocated our pet spa. Just as a note, based on the information we have, the average age for a community such as this is around 70 to 71. And there's more women, single women, as you can imagine, and a lot of pets, so hence dogs, hence the addition of the pet spa. We looked at accessibility. Certainly the whole project is accessible by law, but we added just how people get around. We added a resident loading area, so if a family member was to pick them up, they could wait in the lobby, and in the upper left, they would be picked up. We actually redesigned the parking structures, so there was less ramping, and it's a more comfortable pedestrian experience for residents. And then we redesigned the bikes parking at the bottom so that it was easier for users. All the unit plans were revised to include a roll-in shower, which is important for seniors. And so we really focused on, if we were going to make it senior, we wanted it to work holistically. This also is affecting the operations. So these are all the changes that we made, and then in addition, there'll be more services, more on-site management to complement that. So now I'd like to review the changes that we've made in response to the City Council and community feedback, the largest being the change to eliminating the entire 5th story, as reflected here. This is a view from El Camino. The addition of the retail on Anna in the bottom corner left, and then we expanded the retail on El Camino as well, as was described. We are offering a community meeting hub. This is something we got feedback from the residents in our June meeting. Basically, it would be something that we would manage. It would be free to nonprofit and community groups, be fully furnished. The general consensus at the meeting was it was something they were interested in. This is just some imagery of how it might feel and some of the amenities that would be included, and I'm happy to explain more of that as well. We have been following the public spaces conversation in Santa Clara. From the bottom right, we added a public plaza on Anna. There's a new pedestrian linkage between the 2 streets, and then we enhanced the public plaza out on El Camino Real as well. This is a view, the public plaza on the corner. It will be lined by the existing magnolias at Chase. We also addressed some of the TDM and requests. So On the upper right, the question was asked about transit passes. Initially, we were doing a welcome transit pass just during lease-up, and then we realized with seniors, it was actually a good program to have a permanent program, so any new senior that moves in for the perpetuity of the project would get a free month's pass on VTA, and then complemented by orientation with the on-site staff of how to ride the bus and how to get to Caltrain and how to experience VTA. We are up to 25 EV charging stalls in response to feedback, and then we've added bike sharing for the seniors and some electric bike charging stations in response to comments. And then last but not least is we made all these changes, but we set out saying we've made all these other commitments previously to the immediate neighborhood, and we're going to stick behind those. And so these are the highlights of things that we'd worked on from 2015 to 2017. Committing to 3-story height adjacent to the Casa de Ana townhomes. Those are our only residential adjacencies. We eliminated the vehicular access through redesign. We are proposing traffic calming now. We're saving these 2 trees photographed. We're replacing their sound wall. The setbacks that we had increased, we've preserved. We've retained the quiet, secure side yard that they had requested as well. Some of the neighborhood and walkability improvements that are broader. We talked about the traffic trips, this complete streets design, which is separated sidewalks, street trees, wide sidewalks will be on both frontages. We talked about the traffic signal that we'll be installing and the lighted path. And then just it's going to be easier to walk around. Right now there's 5 driveways on El Camino and 3 on Ana. So it's a tough environment. These are the traffic calming improvements that we've been working with staff on and are committed to do to help the neighborhood. Again, these weren't requirements, but something that we brainstormed with community feedback. So as you can see, we've made a lot of significant changes in response to council and community feedback, and we appreciate the information and the insights we've gotten through that process. Just to touch on the architecture, we're still committed to a highly high quality, detailed design community as we were before, materials and so forth. One of the elements that resounded in our neighbor discussions is the fact that the residential is set back from the retail, which is very different than a lot of your mixed-use projects in town. So ranges anywhere from around 10 to 16 feet where the retail's in the foreground and that residential is set back. That seemed to be a good design theme that people liked. This is a view of the public plaza on El Camino, seating, outdoor dining. There will be an art element, bike parking. This is the view of the new retail on Ana with the public plaza on the right. And notably, you can see the transition down to the 3-story towards Casa de Ana townhomes as well. Here's a blow-up of that new plaza and the connection out through Chase. We have a robust TDM plan. We have expanded this in response to community feedback through the process. Similarly, our sustainability program has expanded in response to requests in that front. Happy to talk about that. Our project community benefits are great. I think to echo Chair Ikesi's, this project is fully consistent with the general plan. It provides new senior housing, which is a priority in the general plan, as well as commercial space. We are reducing the existing traffic. We're making traffic improvements. We are offering a community meeting hub and public plazas. Just to confirm, we will be paying $3.2 million in park fees in addition to all the amenities that we're providing on site. With regard to the school district, we anticipate about $300,000 annually going to the school district and based on the tax increment, but we're also not impacting enrollment because there's no children. We are maintaining a respectful transition to the existing neighborhood, providing a robust TDM plan, and then with the increased assessed property valuation by more than $70 million, everybody benefits, the city, the school district, as well as the county. So with that, we thank you very much, and I'm available for any questions, as is the rest of our project team.
Thank you for the presentation. Okay, Commissioner Kelly.
Yeah, I just have a couple questions for the applicant. Regarding the VTA passes, you're going to give them the first month. Can you just have people opt in at the time of the lease? Is it like a 1-year lease or 6-month lease?
It's typically a 1-year lease.
Okay, so maybe give them an opportunity at the initial lease, and then every 6 months, if they reconsider using VTA, because we would like to have the passes free as the VTA suggests. Okay. And then the second question I have for you is the townhome complex, which is obviously the one that's going to be most impacted. I noticed there was one letter from one resident regarding the outreaches meetings to the adjacent complex. Overall, with the new plan, how was the feedback?
They were, candidly, they were supportive of the first plan. So this is just an enhancement from what we had proposed before. As you saw, there was a list of items that we worked on to address their concerns in the original plan. So when we went forward in March, those were the elements that brought that. They were supportive the last round. So now they're even more, I can't say they're even more supportive. They are still supportive, at least the residents that we've spoken to.
Okay, those were my only concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Halloran?
Yes, when I'm looking at the analysis here, it says that we're going from 23,000 square foot retail to 17 or 18,000 square foot retail. And I know that's a concern. I'm not sure if we have reduced the footprint or we've added some things like the dog park or whatever that has made it. What is the difference that we have lost retail square footage?
So just to clarify, the 23,000 is the existing retail on site today.
Right.
So and our proposed is 17,909. The retail as designed is in different locations, so it's not a direct translation. I will say that we are anticipating about twice as many tenants, though. There's currently, as was listed, there are 4 tenants on the site right now. We're thinking there will be about 8. But one is, and I should have mentioned one of the questions that did come up quite a bit in our last hearing, and it was mentioned tonight, was the existing tenant, the restaurant. And we've actually been working with him since March, and we are providing him with 5 months free rent once we own the property, and we're actually working with him to potentially locate in the building, so it's pretty exciting.
And in the first proposal, there had been that leasing office. Is that now not part of the retail?
That's correct. There is nothing that relates to the apartment community counted in that retail.
Okay. And on the community room, if we decide that that's a good thing to do, would there be hours of service that you'd anticipate?
Yes, it would vary by the day of the week, and it's outlined in my letter. I want to misspeak here. This is what we anticipate at this time would be 10 to 9 Monday through Thursday, and then 10 to 6 Friday through Sunday.
Okay, great.
Or as the leasing office is open.
Similar to the library? Yeah. I think those are our library hours too.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's it, I'm sorry.
Okay, Commissioner Jane? Commissioner Jane.
Yeah. Trying to figure this out. Okay. The parking ratio is 1.26, which concerns a lot of people. Had you considered going underground for the parking to add some more parking? And then can you explain, you're doing unbundled parking, right? And then presumably, I guess, the residents could park in the commercial after hours. I'm trying to understand how we're going to make all this parking work.
Okay, so I think I'm trying to answer all your questions. So first of all, our parking ratio at 1.26 was based on senior market information. And the report that Steve is referring to actually has a lower average parking ratio. So this type of community sees typically about 1.16. The 100 North Winchester is 1.14. So 1.26 is actually on the higher end of this type of community. So, we get it coming both directions. Some people say we have too much parking, some people say we don't have enough. So we felt that this was a reasonable amount to have based on the market information that we had. It is higher than like-kind projects. So that's where we came up with the parking. We do not believe there's a need for more parking. We made a very conscious decision to park the commercial at 100% per code, 5 per 1,000. So that is, so it's, you know, the residential was based on the senior data that we had, and the commercial was based on the city's code. Your question is, could they use it after hours? We have not designed it to say that, but that's something that, you know, if it's 11 o'clock at night, you know, we could potentially sign it that way. It's not part of our project description, but we're open to, you know, having that dialogue if that makes sense. To clarify the unbundling of the parking, we are proposing to unbundle, every resident gets one space if they have a car. We would be unbundling the remaining spaces. So just to clarify that.
And by unbundling, you mean you'd charge for?
Yes, correct.
You'd charge for the extra space?
For the extra spaces, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And as you can imagine, there will be people that do not own a car.
Right.
In this demographic.
And so generally with unbundling, you know, people don't want to pay for the parking, and they're going to go park on the streets. So often in the situations where you do have unbundled parking, you have to do permitted parking in the neighborhood to prevent the residents from this complex from parking on the street, say on Anna Drive. And there's been some contention in the city about managing the permits and charging residents for that. I'm wondering, would you be working with the city then to implement some sort of permitted parking? Let's say the residents ended up, I mean, you're saying your data shows that there's sufficient parking there.
Yes, that's
but
right.
Of course, the community is concerned that there is not. So I'm wondering, how do we sort of mitigate the impacts? Let's say the community is right. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I guess to clarify, we are not unbundling the main parking asset. So just to be clear.
Well,
it's
every,
just the
every apartment gets one for free.
Correct.
But if an apartment has 2 cars, because there's
Correct.
2 people living there, then they have to pay for the second car.
That's correct, right.
And so if they want to say, I'm not paying for the second car, I'm just going to park on the street. Do you know what I'm saying?
I understand.
You get the
understand.
spillover effect onto the streets. And then the residents who live in the neighborhood say, hey, why is this complex created all this parking problem for us?
Yeah, we typically unbundle, in fact, I think you guys conditioned us at the last lap to unbundle the second space. It's a managed process. So I do feel, based on the data that we see, that we do have enough parking. We typically have not seen impacts that you're describing. So I'm not sure how I would mitigate.
I guess I'm just saying, I would like you to reassure me that you're going to help the city with a permitted parking program in case you somehow guessed wrong on the parking.
We could help. We could help if that became an issue. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Because I see that.
I will say that
is
it's a
the natural.
managed, to your point, that it's managed. So if you have, it's price driven, right? So you want people to fill the garage. And I will say one of the content or pieces of the market research study that we got is that people are looking for, in this age group, and as I mentioned, it's a lot of women, it's safety and security. They're there to live in the building and to be in the building and know they have a locked gate. There's a lot of things that will be included in our design, like lighting the garage, painting the garage, things that are well beyond a market rate project. So we certainly would help if there was an issue, but I think at least the information that I have based on people living there and the parking demand, that we would have adequate parking. And we're prepared to provide additional data if it seems like it's of interest. Mm-hmm. We just got the comments yesterday.
Mm-hmm. So I am, of course, interested in getting people out of their cars, and I'm concerned about the 1-month free transit pass, because when you move into an apartment, you're just trying to get settled. And in the first month, you may not even think about doing transit, I'm just thinking that, especially for seniors, when I looked at it, I think VTA is only $25 a month for a transit pass. So it just seems like since it's a senior facility, perhaps as VTA has recommended, you just offer transit passes for free for everybody, for all seniors, and then maybe a $25 subsidy for anybody else under 63 or 2 for transit passes. Just to, again, get people to not need cars, to get them out of their cars. And, that's part of the TDM program that VTA has recommended. The other thing that, I was wondering about was that, you have these kiosks, this electronic thing for helping people use transit, but these are older people. They probably are not going to be able to figure that out. So how do you help with getting people to understand the transit and so on?
Could be, it's a lot of times the old-fashioned way. For sure, they would be getting the old paper welcome basket with all of that information printed. There'll be a cyber lounge for people that even don't have a computer, that they could access that. And as I mentioned, the staff there is it's a little bit different. It's more hands-on and helping those kinds of topics. So I think, to answer your question, the old-fashioned way, paper, and then the staff, and then also having the online portal as well. I would like to answer, I guess, on the transit passes. In our TDM plan, and as staff had pointed out, we have to meet reduction thresholds, and full transit passes are a tier 2 item as well. So we're going to hit those numbers at 26 trips is going to actually get lower because we have to meet that 20% threshold. So that is part of our TDM plan. If we're not hitting our numbers, that's the first thing we're going to go to. So.
Okay, the last question I have is that, you have this 3 years of TDM monitoring. So you're going to have a third party do the monitoring of the TDM and report to the Director of Community Development. I'm wondering if some places like San Jose State did this study where they went and looked at the utilization of parking garages. I'm wondering if we could add that to the TDM monitoring, just to track the utilization of the parking garages. They usually go out at 3 in the morning and just count how many empty spots there are. And that way, it would reassure the community that that people are not parking in the neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we could do that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chahal.
I have some questions regarding your traffic studies, because most of the residents, they really pointed out traffic is the biggest issue in this corridor. Like when we're talking about Santa Mas, Los Pedres, McCormick, and Scott. So I did, after I heard back from the resident, I did prepare an Excel sheet with some studies which we were presented in 2012 for the town center project and your data. So I need to present that, and then I have certain questions on that.
Okay. It's actually not my traffic study, so I would defer to the city and the environmental consultant.
Anybody who can help me out on that is fine.
I'm not the traffic person.
Can you expand?
Full control.
Okay. So I'm not sure who will answer my question on traffic if applicant is not, because I have some questions on that. Whom should I pose this to, applicant or to staff? It's our report. Our report? Okay, so let's start with that. So once I heard back from the community about the traffic, I pulled some data. I requested the 2012 town center traffic studies, and then I also got the Hexagon current studies which we've done for Summerhill project. So if you look at the first, second column, so I only did this thing for Scott and El Camino, and that too, just a through traffic. I didn't make a left turn, right turn, just to analyze some of the through traffics on Scott and El Camino, and it's really, really bad right now. So if we see on the 2012, actuals were the numbers like 594, Scott northbound, Scott southbound, this is AM data on the top, 165, El Camino eastbound on AM 439, El Camino westbound 682. And the average delays, next column, AM 35.2 seconds, and level of service was D. Now, then we did the cumulative study with the project, cumulative study with the town center project. Those are the numbers on the D column. And they increased like 707, 208, 486, 732, and similarly for the PM data too, they increased. And then there are actual numbers. In the current study, we got the actual numbers. So 2012 projected cumulative versus the 2017 actual numbers we are facing. So number which was projected was 707, just take Scott northbound, 707. Whereas actual right now, we have 861 traffic volume in the AM. Column E4 basically. Now this is, as per our studies, what we approved on, we see an increase of 21.78%. This was purely extrapolated, which we see a real increase in traffic against which the town center project was approved. So almost 22% traffic is more than what we expected it to be. And my question is, the average delays, the highlighted ones, I see the AM 35.2 second, and currently also with the very high number, it's a 33.9. First question is, can I know how we calculate this average delay number?
Since it's a technical report from the consultants, I'll have the consultant response to this.
Oh, yeah, sure. Anybody. I'm open to hear from anybody. Yes.
Good evening. Chair, members of the commission, Shannon George with David Powers and Associates. The delay is based on the totality of functionality of the intersection, so how long you have to sit through a light cycle in every direction, and it's averaged out. So there's one direction which may be particularly bad, but it's averaged with the other directionality of the intersection as well. So when they look at how much time you have to sit to get through the light at each point, they average that out, and that's your average delay.
So what I see is on most sections, the traffic has increased. How come the delay is same?
So the delay, if you look in either the traffic report or in the initial study, we have a definition of what the delay means.
Mm-hmm.
In the initial study, I can tell you what page it's on. Maybe, there it is, page 98. So there's the definitions for intersection delay. Mm-hmm. And as you, for each level of service, as you the traffic gets worse, the amount of delay required to bump you to the next level of service increases. So from level of service A, it's a 10-second or less delay. to go from A to B, it's 10 seconds. To go from C, it's 15 seconds, and it continually increases. So just because you're seeing an increase in delay doesn't necessarily mean that based on level of service, the functionality of the intersection is worse. It's based on how it functions relative to the definitions of the letter grade.
So basically what we are saying is when we have further more bad, worse condition, we move the scale and we still keep it to the D or C scale.
Well, so
loss of
long as
service.
it's within the defined parameters of it.
Yeah, so our parameters are such that even though the traffic on all the intersections has gone bad, but we are saying, oh, no, the delay remains the same and level of, rather I was surprised when you see the 2017 average delay and loss of service, it came to C from D. Now we are in a worse condition. And my column H4, it says C versus where we had a loss of level of service at D over in 2012.
Right, because the breakpoint between C and D is 35.0 seconds.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is how is this breakpoint being analyzed, like average delay? I couldn't make it out, like how can traffic has increased so much? It has increased by 21, 22% on various, most of the intersections, and still the delay is reduced?
So part of it is over, even just since 2012, we know that there's been a substantive amount of development that has occurred along El Camino, and each one of those developments causes changes in traffic patterns. You know, when you're replacing retail with residential, the AM and PM trips are going in different directions. And so, and when you add mixed use, you're getting pass-by trips, you're getting, you know, people utilizing that mixed use that live there. So the traffic patterns change. And so you may see an overall increase, but that doesn't necessarily mean intersection by intersection that it's getting worse. Some intersections could improve and some intersections could continue to degrade over time.
So are you telling me that since 2012, some intersections on this section has improved?
It's possible, yes.
Anybody?
Now, this is based purely on the functionality of the traffic models. I understand that personal perceptions and observations may be different because people don't like to sit in delay. I don't like to sit on El Camino Real either in traffic, and I have to do it all the time. But we cannot base it on our personal opinions. This traffic analysis and the CEQA analysis is based purely on the traffic methodology that's adopted by the city, that's adopted by the county, and adopted by the state. And based on those numbers, that is what we're seeing.
But to me, the numbers don't match. What I'm seeing is every intersection traffic has increased and still our delay has reduced. So
right, but again,
we won't agree
it's
on
the
that,
direction.
But I don't know how the study was conducted, but
again, it's based on the direction of the traffic. So if you have a four-way intersection and you have an increase in traffic, but because of a change in land use, maybe the traffic is now going east instead of west, and west was the impacted area, and you've changed that directionality, your overall average delay through the entire intersection could go down.
But what I'm saying is every intersection has increased. If I would buy it, if 2 or 3 intersections crossed, traffic has reduced, I'm like tremendously, on other side it has increased a little bit, I can buy that. I can average it out.
Sure.
But that's not what is happening here. Every intersection has a traffic increase on that, on this particular analysis I did on the Scott.
I'm not disputing that traffic has increased across the entire length of the roadway. Again, it comes down to the directionality of the traffic, where those trips are going and where they're originating from.
Okay. Now, if I go to next one, if going further to the last column, J4.
Yes.
Now we see the projected 2017, if I just take the Scott northbound AM traffic is 1,008. And all of these are further increasing. Even the PM traffic is increasing. Like PM traffic on Scott southbound is 1,254 versus 711 in 2012. Even over here, the delay is just a second away, just 39.9 seconds. And on top, it's less than the delay in 2012. I cannot envision how these numbers are being calculated.
Because everybody living in this city knows the delays have increased, traffic has gone bad, and everybody is suffering because of that. That's a big, big concern for the people. And I'm not convinced how this traffic study has been made. What is making this study as no delays remain the same? And level of service, instead of in 2012 from D, now we are at level C. I can't believe it.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure how else what other information I can give you.
No, these are numbers. It's not
No,
subjectivity. I'm talking
I
about the
understand,
number.
but again, it's not as simple as, you know, yesterday I sat in traffic and I sat at this intersection and it took me 2 light cycles to get through, or maybe a minute, and then a year from now, it's taking me a minute and a half. I mean, it really depends on what's happening throughout the area. It's not just one individual project. And again, land uses change directionality of traffic. You know, if you have an abundance of housing in one location and an abundance of jobs in another location, everybody's going the same direction. And we see that all over. I saw that coming here tonight, going down Coleman, one direction of Coleman's parking lot, and I zipped right up because there was nobody on my side of the road. Everybody's going the same direction. When you mix up your land uses, like is what's been happening on El Camino since the general plan was adopted, you're getting that mix. And so not everybody's going the same direction anymore. People are going different directions because some people are going to work this way and some people are going to work this way and the opposite coming home. And so even if traffic's increasing, again, because of the way they average out the impact of each direction of an intersection, each leg of an intersection, the delay may not be reflective of people's observations of I'm sitting in more traffic, because it's not just their direction of traffic that's being accounted for, it's every direction of traffic.
Okay. And my other question was the delta between projected and the actuals. How we have that much, did we not take some considerations?
I didn't do that study, so I don't know.
There's a big delta.
I cannot vouch for the numbers from that study, I'm
Even
sorry.
in both, see, there is 21% delta, like what were projected, we are 21, 22% more than what was projected for a previous project. And
But that's not just the project, right? That's overall. So if you're,
Town center, I'm saying the report during the town center project. In 2012, I picked up that report.
Right.
And the projected at that time was, let's say, Scott Northbound was only 707. Whereas
Right.
actual we did right now is 861, which is 21, 22% higher.
Right, but that traffic is not just from the town center. There's been other projects approved and developed since then.
And the traffic study has to take into consideration the other aspect, because I studied 2012 report. It went all the way up to down to Forbes, down to Homestead, and it did take into consideration some of the other projects too. So I know that it's not only taking one particular project, and that's what the totality brings it. And my question on that one is, the real reason I'm talking about this is, this corridor is one of the worst corridors in Santa Clara. Santa Mas, El Camino, Scott, we have 5 traffic lights within 50 meters of each other, 5 traffic lights. And that's what is disturbing me. For the changing the zoning from what we have right now to adding, even if we add one extra trip or whatever it is not in benefit of the current residents over there. So, these are the numbers I just plugged in today, after hearing all the comments from the residents. And if I see this thing, I'm not convinced that this is the right place for changing the zoning on this one.
That's fair enough. If I may, I would like to add that when you, just the discrepancy in the cumulative and the actual, the cumulative takes into account projects that are known at the time that the notice of preparation is released for the project. There could have been subsequent projects that came on after that fact that were not accounted for in their analysis. So that may be your delta there, just
Yeah,
as
I
an
know.
FYI.
That's the reason I didn't take the background only. Background is the only this project,
Right.
whereas cumulative is this project, 1890 on El Camino, and some other project which might happen. So I did take the cumulative only.
and the difference of cumulative was a huge difference. That's all. Okay, so I probably agree to disagree on the numbers on this one.
That's perfectly fine. I mean, in actuality, fairly soon, we're going to be moving away from level of service anyway, so we won't be addressing traffic in this manner.
If you bring the level of service, like, we have A, B, C, D, E, F, right? When we send our kids to the school, everyone sitting over here would like that kids come with a grade A from the school, right? And I don't know why we lowered our standard. We say D is good. On traffic studies, we say
Yes, the city's adopted standard
D
is
is
C,
adopted
is D.
standard. How many of the residents will send their kids to the school, they say, oh, D is okay, no worries, come with the D, that's okay, fine with that. I think we are lowering our standards, and that's impacting the quality of life of our residents.
Is that it? Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Reinhardt.
Yeah, just real quickly on the
Commissioner
traffic
Kelly?
study.
Yeah, he has something to say.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, just real quickly on the traffic study. You have noted that some of the 2017 numbers reflect improvements that have already been made, correct?
They should, yes.
Does any of this
I mean,
incorporate?
truthfully, I don't, the 20, I'm sorry to interrupt, the 2017 actual, I don't know where that data came from. I'm not sure what that's based off of.
Hexagon study.
Oh, you mean the existing condition, they're existing, okay, thank you for clarifying.
Hexagon study.
Thank you for clarifying, okay.
Okay. Regarding traffic, because I know people keep asking, not just for that intersection, but for other intersections, traffic calming, coordinating signals to reduce the average time people have to wait.
Sure.
So does this incorporate anything that is projected to be completed this year? Or is it just everything that is year to date?
No, under existing condition, we can only account for what's actually on the ground, so any future improvements would not have been incorporated into the existing plus project analysis.
Okay. And then just to clarify, when you have peak times, that's a flood of people going to work or going home, correct?
Yeah, it's an approximately 2-hour window in the morning and afternoon when you have the most people on the road.
Okay. And can you tell me what percentage of that is local residents and what percentage is the people coming from out of the city into the city for work-related employment?
Unfortunately, no, I cannot do that. On this size of a project, the scale of the number of intersections that had to be studied is very small. So we're only seeing the most localized effect of what's happening. If it was a much larger project, then you would be looking further out and you could see more of the patterns of if it's coming from other jurisdictions. But with a study of this size, there's no way to determine where those trips are originating from.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, does Commissioner Reinhardt still have questions?
Can I ask a point of order, please?
No, you can't.
It's a point of order, I
We have
can't.
not opened the hearing to the public
No, I'm
yet,
asking a
so-
point of
A
order.
point of order is only asked by members of the commission, not members of the public.
Okay,
Sit
can we
down.
Can we get
If
back
you
on
cannot,
topic? This
if you
has
cannot,
nothing to do with this.
I need to ask you to leave if you cannot follow the chair's instructions.
No, I'm just asking if we can get back on topic. The town center isn't this
I
topic.
asked you to sit down if you cannot.
Okay, I'm just asking to get it back on topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Reinhardt?
Thank you. The VTA pass thing that was brought up earlier, Gloria, I thought you said some projects have it in perpetuity. Did I catch that right? Some other projects, as a part of their conditions, they offer the VTA passes?
Yes, we have some projects that have been, had conditions of approval where we've asked to incorporate the passes, either the Clipper cars or an Eco Pass, that at the time that a lease agreement is signed, and then upon every renewal. So that would be for a one-year period.
And so if a new person comes into the building, would they be offered the same, or is it just the initial?
No, they would be offered each new tenant. So that's how the condition of approval was structured.
Okay. And is there, the applicant, could you explain, is there a reason why you chose the other method for just 1 month versus that? Sorry. Or how that got determined?
I think the intent was that it was an introduction to riding transit that would be in perpetuity, that they would be, get comfortable with wanting to do it. But as I mentioned, our TDM plan is very rigorous on meeting further reductions on traffic, which obviously seems like it's very important. So that's the second tier, is if we aren't making that 20% trip reduction, 10% as part of TDM, then we would actually go to a higher level of transit passes.
And is that, Gloria, that's different than what these other projects had done? She said
Well, I think the difference here, and I don't want to speak out of turn, we are the first mixed-use project within the general plan and the current climate action plan. We're the first ones to take on this responsibility of having a TDM plan and having to meet annual reporting and this 20%, 10% factor, at least our site, from what I understand. So it's a different model, but the end result is we have to reduce trips. And so I think one of the thoughts we've had is the TDM plan is an organic document. We will learn what really works. The goal is to get people out of their cars, right? So there are things that were invented last year that weren't around 2 years ago. So for us, our obligation, and that's the annual reporting, is actually, there's a condition of approval that if we're not meeting that, the reporting doesn't end. It's going to be at the discretion of the community development director to have that annual reporting. So we have to not only meet the trip reduction, the annual reporting, and it's at the discretion of the city to keep that annual reporting for as long as they deem fit.
Okay.
So it's just a little different model.
Sure. One more thing while you're up here, and I don't know if it's from us or drafting. The slide had the new EV charging, was it like 25 spots? I think the document still reflects an old number. I think it was like 13 or 14. No, in the conditions of approval.
Yeah. That's because we're offering more than what's required.
Okay, so that's just, should that be written that way or no?
You can update the condition. We're
Okay.
willing to commit to that.
And then the last thing was the parking outside on the street. Is it within the purview of the neighborhood to be able to create their own parking district?
It's not a parking district, but it would be basically a permit parking plan. And currently, under the city's, the city code, it does require a survey of the residents that would be participating in a majority support. So it's really supposed to be initiated by the neighborhood.
So they would be able to do that if they
Yes.
foresaw this as a potential issue
Yes.
before the new project was even built?
Well, it takes a little while, but yes, it could be processed. It would probably be within that time frame. It could be approved before the project would be up and running, if
Right,
they
I
so
mean,
desired.
If we approve this today, how long would it take to be built? Like a year or two?
A couple years.
Yeah.
But just to clarify, I'm willing to participate if there is a problem. I would not support starting a parking permit without having them, that doesn't seem like it makes sense.
Well, if I mean, it's up to the neighbors, right? If they wanted to do that, they have the permit, they can do that
Oh,
without.
just on their own. I get
Yeah,
it. You're right.
yeah.
Yeah, they have to
Like, even if we
initiate
weren't
it.
here.
Right,
correct.
they could do it today. Okay. I just want to make sure they had that flexibility.
Thank you.
That's it, thanks.
Okay, Commissioner O'Halloran.
Just since we're on the topic of traffic, and last night at the city council meeting, they were talking about Stevens Creek traffic and talking about various remedies for trying to do something better, talking to the VTA about making it. One question I have is, what is the status currently of the BRT proposals from VTA on El Camino?
We just had this discussion internally, and it's probably, it's a project concept through VTA, but it's, the city initially supported it in being one of the pilot programs here, but there was some opposition to it from businesses and residences. So right now, it's not really an ongoing proposal for Santa Clara. So I think it's available, but whether or not it's not, nothing active that's being pursued.
One of it's just that there's going to be traffic issues along El Camino.
Yes.
And getting to that, I know there was talking about an El Camino specific plan or a focus
Yes,
plan.
there's a focus
What is the
area.
status of that? That was,
We're in the process of executing the agreement, and I believe that has been signed, but there's some, there'll be a kickoff. So it's about a 2-year process. And so the outreach meeting should be, I know that there was just some minor adjustments needed to the contract, but then it's supposed to start the public outreach pretty soon.
okay. And I know there was basically kind of a hold on new development proposals, but this was considered an exception?
Yes, there were projects that were considered in the pipeline, and since this one had already gone through the process, and then there was, the change in the proposal, there was no general plan amendment. It had been further along that the council did support it moving forward as a revised project.
Do we have any standard traffic impact fees, or have we ever gone through and looked at a project and said, you are obviously going to be impacting the traffic here, and money should go towards some future traffic improvements?
We do have traffic impact fees. They're based on the square footage of the project. If there are mitigation fees, if there are traffic improvements proposed, we do collect a fair share. And it depends upon, some are local, others are through their county roadways or expressways. And we have had projects routinely pay into a fair share, and it's based upon what their impact is. So
Well, has this been included in this proposal at all? Any traffic impact fee?
Yeah, we
You
haven't
talked about
received.
parks and.
No, we haven't received comments on impact fees from traffic on this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jane.
So I like to ride my bike all over town, and when I ride on El Camino Real, it's extremely treacherous. And part of it is that there's cars parked along El Camino Real. And I know the city doesn't really have a policy for removing parking on El Camino, but I have ridden by the villas, and I know that there's no stopping, there's no parking in front of the villas project. And I'm wondering what the opportunity is to remove parking, because does your project need the parking on El Camino Real for the residents? Could we just change it to maybe loading only for, deliveries, but no street parking? Because with those cars parked right there, when I ride my bike on there, it's just extremely treacherous, so.
So our project is not dependent on street parking. All of our calculations are based on on-site parking. We would defer to the city on that, because that actually came up even in our PCC about street parking on El Camino, loading, no loading. So if it became a condition of approval not to have street parking, we would accept it. Generally, the retailers are going to like street parking, as you can imagine. So we would defer to the city on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just adding on to that, we did not receive, street parking is on the El Camino Real, and ANA is subject to traffic division's plan. There's no plan to get rid of parkings right now on El Camino Real. And ANA Drive, the applicant did propose some loading zone that was declined by the traffic division. Also on El Camino, the loading zone.
You're saying that a loading zone on El Camino was declined by traffic?
And on ANA was both
And both
declined.
on ANA? So if they had deliveries, where would they get deliveries? In the parking garage, I imagine.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we're ready to open the hearing to the public. And how many of you would like to come up to the podium and speak? Okay. I would like to, I have to mention that I was disturbed by one of the public who came up and insisted on speaking out of order. If I need you to adhere to the procedures, and if you cannot, I am going to suspend the hearing. If I need to remove somebody from the public or from the hall, I will call the police and I'll suspend the hearing until that person is removed. So I'd like to let you know that before we start. Okay, so if you'd like to speak, if you could line up and wait in line and, well, do we have cards to? We only have one card? Oh, okay. So if you could get in line so that we can have a smooth line of people speaking one after another, that will get us through the hearing in a more streamlined manner. Okay, the first person is Mr. Michael Tsai. And you are up to 2 minutes to speak. Mr. Tsai? Okay. All right. Let's have, the next person is Mr. Mark Apton.
Thank you, Planning Commission, and thank you, Summerhill, because we appreciate companies like Summerhill wanting to invest in our city and coming up with great plans like this. There is one drawback, and that is that we need to stop all high-density housing in Santa Clara because of our traffic issue.
And also, please refrain from applauding and interrupting the hearing. I need you to, it has happened several times earlier, and we'd like to have an orderly proceeding, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And so one of the things that I've noticed is that when we have these hearings, it's never mentioned how much high-density housing we've built since 2008 and how much is approved and being built. So we have some idea of how much we're already being impacted and why we're seeing this horrendous traffic problem that we have and other problems that we have. So, and the immediate obvious thing is that we're going to have less retail. So because we are very, historically, very high in retail compared to cities like Saratoga, you know, we have to feel sorry for Saratoga. They're right next door and they come here to shop and they're no longer going to be able to come shopping here. So, if we're going to plan on having urban density, then we need to have an urban transit system. And that means a subway system. So we have to build a subway or some modern system of transportation other than VTA. VTA is outdated and not even relevant. The general plan is getting maxed out. We've already built so many, we've permitted so many high-density housing buildings on El Camino that you just do a sanity check. You don't need to have any numbers. Drive down El Camino, look how much cranes and construction's going on there, and how many have been built in the last 5 or 10, 15 years. It's just a completely ridiculous number. Every permit is for max. So because our we have a general plan there, and it's not up to date. Everybody's asking for the max or more. They're finding ways to get around the max even with this senior thing. So it looks like I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could the staff start collecting the cards from the speakers so that we can get people in line? I understand, but you know, if I can get them in order, that will be helpful. Okay, is Mr. Tsai back? No. The next person is Gary Alves. And after that, we'd like to have Mr. James Solinas ready to speak. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gary Alves. I live on Denise Drive, which is a couple blocks away from this project. And I strongly oppose this project. I've opposed it for the 2 years they've been trying to get this passed through here. Mr. Chahal, I had the same kind of conversation you had with the parking, or the traffic with these people at the June 22nd meeting. And it was the same thing. They refused to acknowledge that the traffic is going to get worse. The traffic is bad. My traffic study is, if I go out in the El Camino at 5:30, it's backed up. It's bad. And this project's going to make it worse. You can't add 150 apartments and the traffic's not going to get worse. And also, that same meeting, which was June 22nd, they claimed that nobody opposed that project. I opposed the hell out of it that day, and I wasn't the only one. I was talking to a few older women. We asked what the rent was going to be. They didn't want to say. Then they kind of gave us an idea. The two women I was with almost flipped. They couldn't believe it. It was not affordable. It's not affordable for seniors what they're going to be renting these places for. So that kind of defeats the purpose of having senior housing if they can't afford it. Also, I'm 57 years old. I have 3 cars. My wife has a car. We have 4 cars. Nobody in my family has 0.26 of a car. So these parking things they come up with are crazy. Most people have 1 or 2 cars. Usually it's 2 per family. The parking is way under what that project should have. The parking is going to spill into the town center, into Anna Drive, and even onto Block Drive. If you look at their drawing where they have the commercial buildings on Anna, nobody's going to park in their parking lot and walk all the way through that building to get to their retail offices. They're going to park in the town center, or they're going to park in Anna, and they're going to walk right across the street into there. So it's going to screw up the parking for all those areas. Also, they've gone to these meetings and been shot down twice from the city council, and it's been the same thing, density and height. Still 151 units. It's been that way from the very beginning. They refused to cut it down, and it's a 4-story building, but it looks pretty tall. I'd like to know what the feet, how many feet that is, because it looks pretty tall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Tolinas. And that's Mr. James Tolinas, followed by Ms. Susan Tolinas.
I've asked my wife to talk because I have Parkinson's.
If you have difficulty understanding him, I'll repeat what he says.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
One of my concerns, my name is James Salinas, and I live on 1396 Barber Drive, which is like 2 blocks away from...
Ms. Tolinas, can you move the mic closer to Mr. Tolinas's mouth? Thank you.
One of my concerns is the water, the well water that comes from Benton and Scott. There's a well there. And with the high density housing, the water pressure will drop. It's inevitable. No one's addressed that. Not a concern. Well, I have other concerns too, but I'll defer the balance of my time to my wife.
I live 1396 Barber Drive. I've lived there for almost 50 years. Started living there as a 2-year-old. Went to Santa Clara High, Hayman Elementary, Wilson Middle School, University of Santa Clara. So I know Santa Clara well. It's a beautiful community with a rich history. It's rooted, it's just a beautiful place. You know, the Carmelite Monastery, the university, and the historical buildings that have been preserved. There's something special about our city. I love our city. And I see it going down the tubes, the high-density housing. Everywhere you look, Saratoga Avenue, Kylie, El Camino, it's just everywhere. You know, we're urbanizing Santa Clara. The character of the city is going down the tubes. The traffic is horrendous. Do you realize from Scott Boulevard all the way to Marianne Drive, that's all duplexes and rentals, and those people have tons of cars because they live there, okay? And the streets are packed out already. The town center, go there on a Saturday morning, there's no parking, okay? And now, Santa Clara's been built out for years, and now we're going up, up, up to the heavens. How high can we go? Where is this going to end? What are we leaving for our children? What kind of a quality of life? You can't put a dollar sign on the quality of life of the people of our community. It's a beautiful community, and you as a commission have a responsibility to keep the quality up. I don't care what they're doing in Mountain View, Sunnyvale, wherever. We are Santa Clarans. We love our community. Let's keep the quality and the life and the health and the vitality of the city up. Let's leave a future for our children, not a concrete jungle for the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kevin Ward?
Worthy planning commissioners, I ask you tonight to ponder a single question. Would you certify the environmental assessments for this project as is, if it was presented as a rent to anyone project? I cannot imagine how you could conclude that the current analyses include a non-senior housing scenario. And further, I cannot imagine how you could conclude that the current analyses include data for the category of 55 and under. Why? Because the analyses do not access for 55 and under. While no federal or state housing laws require anyone to rent to older persons, these housing laws permit housing discrimination under narrow circumstances, including when housing units include at least one person aged 55 or over. Further, the cited laws allow 100% of the units to have residents of any ages, including children, teens, young adults, and other tenants, as long as each unit has at least one person who is 55 years old. They choose rental flexibility. This means under the application before you tonight, you could have a grandma from India, her adult child, and her child's adult spouse, and 2 grandchildren all living together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Norma Changras.
Thank you, Commission. I just want to say I'm a 58-year resident of Santa Clara, and I love Santa Clara dearly, but it is the traffic, and there is just so many homes already on El Camino, and the traffic is a big issue, and it is every day it's getting worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like to speak? Come up and speak. Would you like to give us your name?
Subrata Ghosh, I gave it there.
Okay, Mr. Ghosh.
Hi, my name is Subrata Ghosh. I'm a long-time Santa Clara resident. After graduating from Stanford, when everybody was trying to live in Palo Alto, Mountain View, I chose Santa Clara because it's such a nice place to live. It was open. And I've been living here for 20 years, right down the street from the City Hall. This is the first time I'm over here. I know I go to vote to select you for the City Council, and I think that you will do a good job. The only reason I came today because it has been becoming a nightmare for traffic over here, you know. I came here for the open. I know population is growing. You have to build some new houses, but you are building way too many and making life very hard. If I had to go to the gym in the evening before I could go to Sunnyvale near Lawrence Expressway easily, nowadays I don't even go out because there are 5 traffic lights are going there and taking longer time. So my request will be to stop all these high-density apartment things. You need money for running the city, getting the property tax, but you have to be reasonable for the people living here. Otherwise, I will tell you, I took Santa Clara as my home, but probably I have to leave this city pretty soon. And also, we need retail spaces. We need restaurants, we need retail spaces. That's very important so that we can save our small business owners. And that will be my request. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Chris Stampolis.
Good evening, Planning Commission and Chair Kesey. Thank you. When is a senior housing project not a senior housing project? Though Gloria Sciarra may like you to believe differently, the proposal before you tonight has no guarantees that this will ever be a senior housing project, much less stay a senior housing project in the future. A $30,000 a month fine is nothing when you're seeking total rent of at least $600,000 a month. Summerhill, Gloria, and Kevin Moore have teamed up to feed you a big Scooby-Dooby-Doo story. They cite federal law and state law, but guess what those cited laws actually say? Have you each personally read the laws? Those laws explicitly provide that any residential property owner may rent to anyone, regardless of age or ethnicity or gender. Those laws specifically do not require a property owner to rent to older persons. So when Gloria and our city attorney's representative tell you that Summerhill's lawyers have vetted the project, the question you need to ask is whether they each have read the actual laws being cited. Your city attorney already has told you two separate things tonight. One, that it can't happen, and then, oops, I haven't read the law. Regardless of their unpreparedness, you should not and cannot be fooled, for this is not necessarily a senior housing project. It certainly isn't an affordable senior project. And though Kevin's friends, Mr. Goldenberg and Mr. Camacho and Mr. Fallon, have all written letters at Kevin's request to support this project, it is not a project that will inspire local property owners to sell their homes and become renters. In your packet, you've got letters that suggest they will, but if one sells one's home for $750,000 and rents for 20 years, one will then have donated 100% of one's home to Summerhill for 20 years. Think this through. You're almost all 55, some of you. Are you going to sell your home and then put it into rent for 20 years?
Thank you. Okay, Jerome?
My name is Jerome Ward. I'm probably one of the youngest people in here, but I'm here. I grew up in Santa Clara. Dominic Caserta was actually my teacher at Santa Clara High. You know, if there's anything that this community doesn't need, it's more housing like this. I got hit once when I was on my bike on Anna Street, in between Los Padres and McCormick Drive. There's no stop signs there. So you can only imagine what would happen to an elderly person. What if there's no proper infrastructure on any traffic signals or anything like that, and someone gets hit? Who's at fault at the end of the day? People who didn't plan properly, or people that are building this, you know? Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Hardy.
Good evening, Planning Commission. It must mean a lot to have pull two former commissioners out of mothballs to come down here on a Wednesday night when I actually found out there is something to watch once in a while on Wednesday. Didn't know that for years. My concern is we put the senior label on a project that was already turned down, trying to make that more palatable. The reason this is back is because it was turned down by the city council. One would ask oneself, why, if this project is so much better, was that not the first project that was brought to you? Because there is a line of defense between the developers and the residents, and that is the Planning Commission and the City Council. And that is your duty, to make certain you really look at a project and ask yourself, is it just good? Is it better? Or is it the best? I know I personally spent many hours working on the Rivermark project. We turned down many situations that were proposed over and over again until it was something that I could live with and sleep nights knowing I had approved. I can still drive past there and feel good about it. But there are some projects that the Planning Commission got overturned that still bother me. And most of them are on El Camino, and the massing is terrible. There's some numbers that were gotten wrong. On page 4 of the first paragraph on circulation and parking, it says the residential use is 1 space per 1.8 units, which exceeds the minimum parking. Well, that number's wrong according to the process. What other numbers are wrong? That's what we need to ask ourselves.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak on this project?
Hi there. Number one, I'm really impressed with the level of questions that you're answering, because I've never heard them answered before, and I hope you do this level of diligence and finally point out how bad the traffic is, how poorly the studies are done, and just how bad our city is doing at developing in the city. Because it's, so far, everybody's been doing a pretty bad deal. So I hope you add this level of diligence to everything that's doing. I must say that when this project first came out, I was strongly opposed to it because it was too high. There was no retail. There was really no community benefit to it. It's like, oh God, another pack and stack. But I have to say, I strongly support this project. And for those of you that know me, I'm not a pushover. And I don't say something I don't mean. And I really mean I support it. Not only do I support it, but I think that Summerhill has been a poster child of what a good developer should be in working with the community. They have really listened. They've added a community room that no one else has done. They brought the stories down. They've added senior housing, which I think we really do need. Not only that, but it's close to the senior center. And if the city gets their act together, guess what? There should be some synergy with our senior center. There's so many opportunities for, thank God, the right project in the right place for a change. You hear about traffic. Traffic around this entire city sucks. And for you to finally bring it on the head of one developer is the wrong thing to do. You talk about mitigation on Anna. I've been trying for a year to get a signal installed that they've already approved. Let's start with getting the entire city fixed. There's traffic problems everywhere. But this is in the right place. They're putting in charging bicycles, plazas, and everything else. Look at all the positives they're doing for us. The right thing in the right place. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Park. If you want to see all the projects that have been approved in the last 4 years, you can look at kevinpark.org, and I've made it the first page. So if you go there, you will see a list of all the projects that I've compiled. And you'll see of all the projects that went from any zoning to PD, and then you'll also note how many of those projects went to maximum density. I'll tell you, I wasn't against this project as much until the traffic person spoke. I think that was a really bad thing, because I've been working with Santa Clara since 2007, 2008, because I worked on the 900 Kiley project, where the traffic studies were done by David Powers and Hexagon. And I also know that we sat, Van Langston and I, Van Langston passed away earlier this year, But we sat and we took pictures of all the cars that went by. We counted them, and those numbers didn't match. And I took pictures, and I can share them with you a little bit later, of the cars that are parked on our neighborhoods, and I can tell you the egress times out of our streets, and they're nothing like we were told. And they certainly didn't get better after they made 900 Kiley. When I hear things like that with new projects, I feel like this project would have been good if we hadn't built 2525 El Camino, which went maximum density, senior housing. If we hadn't built 2615 El Camino, which went above maximum density, PD, because they said there's a supermarket across the street, which also left. That was Save Mart. If we didn't have 2585 El Camino, which also went above maximum density. I remember when Gary Noble, that project was denied for Gary Noble. And it was denied because it was a bad project. And then somebody decided, well, we're gonna put senior housing there. We're gonna increase the density, increase the heights, and it's gonna be better for everyone. Well, it's not better. And I think that that project, to be honest, is gonna hurt Mariani as well. This is supposed to be a planning department and a planning commission, not an approval department and not an approval commission. We need to start planning. If you go to my website, kevinpark.org, you will see it's under development versus planning versus vision. Let's put vision back into Santa Clara, and let's stop just approving.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, would the applicant like to come up for rebuttal?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the comments. On a couple topics, one, the parking. I would encourage members of the community to read the parking study that was prepared for the 100 North Winchester. I think it's a good document with raw data about like-kind projects.
Actually, they're all kind of crap. You don't have to call the police.
Please continue.
Okay. Train of thought.
I'm sorry, would you like to take a few seconds to?
Okay.
Let's
so,
stop the clock for a few seconds.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you. Please start from the beginning.
Okay, thanks.
And I apologize.
No problem. So the parking, as I said, I would encourage the community to look at the parking study that was prepared for the permits, and then just remind you that we are fully parked on the commercial as well. On the traffic, as I mentioned, I'm not the traffic engineer. I'm not involved with the traffic, but I do want to point out a nuance that was kind of interesting. The peak period, these were raw driveway counts that were taken, and the beauty school actually generates a lot of traffic. So I just at least want to let you know that that was a nuance that we saw early on for the site. But generally, this project will reduce traffic. And I know there was a lot of conversation about that. There was a traffic study, and this will reduce traffic. So I think that's an important benefit. We are committed to make, probably close to a couple $100,000 in traffic and pedestrian improvements, and that will improve the process as well. And I think the changes that we've made are very significant to drop the 5-story, the 5th floor. We've been very responsive. I take this very seriously. As you can see, the documented changes that we've made have been one after the other and very unique. I mean, very different brainstorming. The traffic calming came from us. It was a conversation I had with somebody out on the street, one of the neighbors. So I think we've taken this very seriously. I hear comments about parking and traffic concerns. But I appreciate people looking really at what we've done for this project. And I think it's a very important housing type, well-located, that people will be able to just walk around and live there and create community and social well-being. They can interact. They're not holed up in a separate space. They can be together. So I think this whole public places conversation took place. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to have a housing type in the middle of town center that everybody can enjoy and interact. So I would like to also introduce our outside counsel, Jeff Otterman, who can address some of the legal issues regarding the senior housing that have been raised by the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Let me just reinforce what your assistant city attorney told you. The restrictions for occupancy in a qualified senior project are very strict under both federal and state law. And there are really only 3 categories of residents that are allowed other than the qualifying senior meeting the age requirement. One is a spouse or domestic partner. 2 is a child or a grandchild who is himself or herself disabled. So basically, a child or grandchild that's being cared for by the senior. And 3rd, a person who provides the primary economic or physical support for the senior, so essentially a caretaker for the resident. And when the senior, who's kind of the connection that allows those other qualifying people to reside in the unit, leaves the unit, they have to leave as well. The disabled child or grandchild has a little bit more time to leave, but they have to leave. And that's built into the lease, that's built into the rules and regulations, that's built into the law, has to be documented and accounted for periodically. And if you ever walk through one of these projects, which probably most of you have, you see very few younger people who are residents, very, very few. So there are very few people in that category. So the comments that people have made that this is somehow going to be, you know, your kids and your grandkids and their spouses are going to live there is really just not correct at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Chahal.
Just one more comment, excuse me.
Yes.
About enforceability. I'd support what what Mr. Abbey said to you about it being a crime. It can be, the city could enjoin the use. It's also a violation of federal and state civil rights laws to not comply with those regulations. For example, the California Unruh Act has a minimum $4,000 per violation penalty. And so nobody's going to, you know, do this as the cost of doing business. You know, the requirements are strict. The enforcement mechanisms are both public and private. And there's really, you know, people don't get into this business with the idea that they're going to skirt the rules. And we're totally, in fact, we proposed building in the requirements into the PD zone so that we couldn't do that. Because that is a requirement of the law. That'd be a requirement that you impose on us. So we're not trying to avoid the law. We're trying to make sure we stay out of trouble and the city does it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Jane?
Yeah, somewhere in the packet, I read that there's a restriction that the primary leaseholder be over 55, but then the spouse must also be over 45 or something? Is there some sort of, I saw somewhere in there, there's some age requirement of 45.
That's one requirement, but your spouse, if you happen to be 60 years old with a 30-year-old spouse, your spouse could live in the unit.
Okay, and then how many?
I don't think there are very many situations like
Right.
that in these projects, but that is.
And
that
how
is
many,
the law.
how many caretakers can live there? Could it
One.
be like your kid and your kid's wife or husband and?
No, one.
Okay.
The caretaker.
Okay. And that's hard and fast in the conditions of approval?
Yes, that
Okay.
each person who's not a senior has to qualify in one of those categories. So you can only have, you know, one person as the caretaker.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I have several questions. This one is for the applicant. So one of the residents said that at the June 22nd public hearing, several residents raised concerns about traffic. Would the applicant like to tell us how you addressed their concerns when they were brought up?
Well, again, we point to the environmental document that was part of the city's process, and the traffic study indicates that the traffic goes down That's how we address it.
Thank you. I forgot to ask about the Community Hub Center. How, if you were to have this, how can like nonprofits and other people in the city ask to use this room?
They would contact we would, kind of big picture, what we propose is to get in, enter into some kind of agreement with the city to work through some of those mechanics. It would be through the leasing office, though, that they would be able to reserve it.
Okay.
Is how we would do it. I think the city doesn't, we're not putting any burden on the city to manage it.
Okay, so somebody's usually there at the leasing.
Yes, they're there 7 days a week.
Right, thank you. Okay, my last question is, one of the speakers, somebody from the public mentioned that, the staff mentioned that the fine could be $1,000 per day per unit, and that could just be a cost of business. I know you don't have the exact figures, but are we talking about $1,000 for the entire property per day, or $1,000 per unit? I mean, what's the size of the fine that we're discussing, since somebody brought it up?
That's a good question. Every day is a new violation, so it's a minimum of $1,000 a day. Whether there'd be multiple violations, if there are multiple units that are done in violation of the law, I'd have to look into. Certainly it's possible, but as their legal counsel mentioned, there's also penalties under the Fair Housing Act of $4,000 per violation.
Right.
There's criminal penalties. I mean,
Right.
most developers don't want to go to jail, I'm guessing. I mean, there are a number of incentives we can use to get them to comply, other than just the $1,000 per violation.
Thank you, you answered my question. Okay, anyone else? Oh, yes, more people. Commissioner O'Halloran.
Yes, the Summerhill attorney mentioned that we could put something as a condition in on that senior deal, that you had been willing to do that. Could you clarify that? My thought is that we should.
It's already in the conditions.
Yes,
Okay.
it's been included in your
Okay,
conditions of
good.
approval.
Okay, because that's, again, I think it's some pronouncement by the city that we're going to enforce this. Again, we talked about a $100,000 impact fee or traffic improvements. Could you expand on that a little bit?
So there's a couple different parts that we're doing. On Anna Drive, we're doing the traffic calming.
Right.
So those are the bulb outs and then the new crosswalk. And then out on El Camino, we're doing that traffic signal interconnect.
Okay.
That will put the two signals talking to each
Okay,
other.
so those are the details. Okay. Related to Ms. Press' question, where is the stoplight? What's that about? There's not a stoplight, or there's proposed stoplight on Anna?
Which street are you talking about?
Anna? Oh, I'm sorry. Could you clarify that?
One at Cronin.
Cronin, okay, further.
That's on Cronin.
Okay. Not near there, okay.
No, I've been trying for a year to they approved a stoplight on Cronin, and the city can't get their act together to do that. I hope
Okay, down
that
on
traffic
Cronin.
mitigations they can get going on in the entire city. So that's all I was bringing up.
Has there been thought about
as
a stop sign there? Because I know that is a kind of confusing area with Sprouts and all that. Was
Is a
that
stop sign at
consideration?
Block Drive in Anna?
No, it'd be Anna, is it Anna and McCormick? Or is it-
McCormick? There is a stop
There's a
stop sign there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was responding to the question that was raised. Okay.
Commissioner Jane?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on the community room, and I understand that there will be a periodic review with the Director of Community Development as to how that's working. I guess my concern is, I like the idea of the community room, but could Summerhill determine that, hey, this isn't working, we're going to lease this out, for rent and just make the money on rent? Who determines when to shut it down if it's not working? Have you guys worked through any of those plans? Because I really like the idea of the community room.
We haven't worked through those plans, but I think how I envision is ultimately, I think it's council decision. If the council chooses to go the community hub route, And we would have those periodic reviews. I think we've recommended that, after the first 90 days, we look at it and then look at it on an annual basis, that if they've made that decision, it will be in their decision to not have it anymore. So we're offering it, but we're prepared to, if they take it, it's their, we will continue to operate it so as long as at the pleasure of the city.
Okay, thank you.
We couldn't come back and say, it's not really working, we're making it into retail.
Right,
Yeah, if you guys choose to go that route, we're with you.
I see. Thank you.
Any?
Another question?
Oh, okay. Commissioner O'Halloran again.
Ms. Priest, could you talk a little bit again about the retail? You did say that you're working with the Muri, the Indian restaurant. Is the beauty salon still going to be in there, or where's that?
The beauty school it's a beauty school. It's quite large. I think it's about 8,000 feet. So we've worked with them to provide, they have the financial means to relocate.
They're going to relocate? And Verizon is gone and Calamar Bikes is gone?
Actually, Verizon's still there, and they would stay on until
still
such
in,
time
okay.
that they
I thought they were
would
closed.
have to leave. Calamar left, we were not aware of Calamar leaving. They left in March.
Yeah. But you did envision 8 tenants instead, and so what is your envisionment then of retail? How will it be a little different than what we got?
So right now, you have, we just said a restaurant, a beauty school, a retail shop, two retail shops. The way we've envisioned the frontage along El Camino is designed to accommodate restaurants. The corner, as you can see, it has outdoor dining, the northwest corner, and the middle space can accommodate restaurant, and then the end space. So at least we can accommodate up to 3 restaurants. If you look in our civil plans, we actually have the sewer, the grease trap mechanism set up. Grease interceptors are actually in the drawings already. We have ventilation shafts that run up through the buildings. Out on Anna, we have to reroute all the underground utilities from the neighboring properties, so there's not an opportunity to have a grease interceptor out there. So we could accommodate conventional retail services or food use that does not require a grease interceptor. But we're thinking that's probably as many as 5 out on the front and 3 on the back.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If no one else has a question, then is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Michael Sai is here, the very first person.
I'm not sure. You missed your chance to.
Oh.
We've already had a rebuttal. If I ask you to speak, then I have to give the applicant a chance to rebuttal again. So thank you. Let's see. So is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Close the public hearing. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Discussions. Comments.
I would like a couple points that I'd like to pass on. First off,
Okay, Commissioner Kelly.
I think we all are frustrated with traffic. And I actually drive El Camino at least 3 or 4 days during commute hours and deal with the traffic, so I know where you're coming from. And we've talked about synchronizing traffic lights, which in this case, the applicant is paying for syncing of traffic lights to reduce traffic times around the complex. They're also going above and beyond what some of the other developments are. They're offering us a community room. They're offering us senior housing, which, since we did away with redevelopment funds, we really haven't done much senior housing, even market rate senior housing, which is a real need. Now, I know people do not want us to keep growing, and since I've been on the Planning Commission, we were at, I believe at the time I started, about 2.5 jobs for every housing unit. Last time I asked staff, maybe staff can correct me if I'm wrong, we're currently around 2.9 jobs in Santa Clara for every housing unit. we have some real issues. That said, I think with synchronizing the traffics, I would like to see something added regarding the VTA passes, but I would be accepting to have them to report back after the first year of operation, giving us an update on their transit management plan so we could know things are working out as they're supposed to. I also like Commissioner Jane's idea. After the first year of operation, I would like a study to be done to make sure that there's not an undue burden regarding parking in the neighborhoods. So we get an update maybe at the 1-year mark along with the transit management also regarding the parking situation in the complex. That said, with those things added to their approval, I would be okay with approving this complex.
Thank you. Commissioner Jane.
So I'm 55, and if I lived here, I could see myself getting up, walking down to the gym. I wouldn't have to drive to the gym. Then maybe going over across the street to get some coffee, walk there. I could walk over to the grocery store, Sprouts, or, I mean, I bike everywhere, so I don't add too much traffic. But in any case, the idea is, you know, I can really see how a project so close to, I still call it the Mervyn's Plaza, would reduce traffic, because these people that are going to be living there really have everything there. They have the swimming pool, they have the coffee shops, they have the restaurants, they have the supermarket, they have the Target. So there's very little reason for them to actually drive anywhere. So there's now a lot of these people that might be living there are driving from other parts of the city to go to the Pete's and to go to the Panera and go to the Target. And then, you know, the senior center is really only 0.9 miles. It's an 18-minute walk. And if you're on your bike, it would take you less than 10 minutes to bike there. And if you had one of their fancy electric bikes that you could share, you could get there even faster. So the concept is, when you build this mixed-use project like this, you can actually reduce traffic. And I think it's a good place for a senior facility because, you know, at some point I don't want these people on the road anyway. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chahal?
Okay. I do like the project, but I'm struggling with the location of the project. As I mentioned earlier, this particular zone, and we are trying to rezone something, this particular zone is one of the most affected zone from traffic point of view. And my apprehension doesn't stop there. What happens across the road on the Smart and Final complex? If we come up with another project, hey, okay, that's there, we build another one over there. So that, like, because this is rezoning, and one purpose of the rezoning by the planning commissioner is whether this particular location is good for rezoning or not. And I like the project as such. Maybe a different location for this project is good, but in this location, which is one of the worst congested location, I'm struggling to support this thing. And some of the other aspects, traffic, I'm still struggling with the traffic studies, the numbers we get and the numbers, actual numbers are. I cannot envision like how those numbers are made. If you, you can go any of these days on Scott Boulevard around 5:30 or 6 o'clock. You will see green lights on Warburton on Scott, but they cannot go through because still impacted. Because the clearance is not there, still not there. And with those numbers, as I already put in over there, like traffic increasing by 37%, what is being projected, actually, it's getting what we have on paper. It's much worse than that. I can say that. And I always say the growth has to be smart, balanced, and at a right place. And this is not fitting my particular criteria of whether it's balanced and at a particular place. So I will not be able to make a positive judgment on this. Jobs to housing ratios. One of the biggest problem we have is, as Commissioner Kelly mentioned, it was 2.68 sometime back, now it's 2.9. I'll be in the senior category pretty soon, some years, but that is not, this thing is not helping to elevate our jobs to housing ratio. And on the other side, if I put it, so many of the 55-year-old people, they're still working. They're still working. And if a lot of them are working, this again creates a traffic issue in this particular corridor. So I can't envision that one too. What I think is, instead of, like, we do have to take care of the current residents of the city who are living in that corridor. If they are raising all those issues, like Planning Commission or the council is the one who has to analyze what is good or what is bad for that particular area. And we do have to listen to the close-by residents. If I read most of the letters from the close-by neighbors, majority of them are not in support of the project as such. And again, I cannot convince myself to change the zoning on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Reinhardt?
Thanks. I know there's been a lot of the native Santa Clara street cred things thrown out, so I'm going to do mine. So I was driving down El Camino the other day with my grandfather, who I'm fortunate to have still be around, and he was telling me stories about how this was all just orchards, and him and his brother used to cruise El Camino trying to find people to race, and that they used to rip off the gas stations because back then they were on the honor system and you would just pour out of a tank. So I thought that was pretty funny. That was the Santa Clara that my grandfather grew up in. The one that my father grew up in, his first job was at the Shell station on Lawrence and Monroe. It was a different Santa Clara then. He lived in an apartment building. That would dumbfound, my grandfather's era, where it was like I lived on a farm. For me, I grew up here my entire life, and now, as of last month, I have a little kid, and he's going to grow up in a different Santa Clara than I grew up in, and it's becoming more urbanized. We live in one of the best job markets on the entire earth. We essentially are the technology capital of the world, and we're going to keep bringing people here over and over, and they're not going to stop. And it's our responsibility to be good shepherds to not only the people that are here, but the people that are coming, and that's the way that the laws are designed. It's not just protecting, people that are already here, and I think that, to a certain degree, people older than me have a competitive advantage over us because of Prop 13 passing in the 70s. That puts them, way ahead of where I could be. I'm forced into rental housing because our supply is so restricted that it just drives prices up. It's going to keep happening. The only thing we can do to try to alleviate it is build more housing. It's supply and demand. It's not very complex. Urban planning is something I was fortunate to study. The point of it is to adapt and plan and for the future, and the solution to the sort of mistakes we've made in, the genius concept of suburbia in the 50s and 60s is, oh, wow, now there's too much traffic. We're trying to undo that by putting density on transit corridors. That's what the urban planning is for. That's what the general plan is for. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. People get frustrated. They lived here their whole life. It's changing. Well, the world population since my grandfather was born to today is 4x. So people have to go somewhere, and they're going to try to congregate in places where there's jobs. And unfortunately, that's the reality. The best thing we can do is try to build and adapt into a world that makes sense. And, when you get an urbanization coming, and things start moving towards New York City and San Francisco, which, people here aren't thrilled about, just like I'm sure the people in my grandfather's era weren't thrilled that they were knocking down all the trees and the farms. It's sort of the way of the world. So I'm actually disappointed that the density went down. I think it's a mistake. I think we're losing out on an opportunity by putting all the El Camino projects on hold because development only happens when economies are robust, and that window it could close any day. We don't really know. And as that window closes, we lose out on more housing stock until the next, uptick, which could be a decade. And yeah, I'm all for this project, and hopefully we can get more housing.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Halloran.
I think I must be right between your grandfather and your father's age. But I did grow up when there were orchards here, and it has changed a lot. And part of our change was we were part of suburbia coming in. So I think it grows and what you got to do. And I think we need housing. I know that because people are offering me $1 million for my dinky little house on it. And I know my kids are wondering if they're going to come back to Santa Clara. Probably not, unless we can come up with some transition, be it housing or not. And I think this is a good transition. I think it's a good location. Things that I would look at as conditions, so I'd say more frequent survey regarding the senior housing, just to confirm that it's working as it's labeled to be senior housing. I'm actually not in favor of community hub. I'd rather see the retail in that 1,200 square foot piece, but I'm not sure how we'd want to write a motion about that, or if other people would support me. I would like to see, and it sounds like there have been other occasions where we do have a transit pass per tenant in the lease, and I would like to see that as a condition rather than just the 1 month plus training on there, including training. And also in there, and I think it's already intended, but to make it a condition that there be only a loading zone in front on the El Camino Real.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I would like to thank Summerhill for coming back to propose this senior housing. They didn't just walk away after the last proposal got shut down. That has happened at other project sites. And so I really appreciate Summerhill's commitment to this property and to the city of Santa Clara. I understand the concerns about traffic at this the corner of El Camino and Scott, because it is my commute route as well. But several people made claims that this is the worst traffic in Santa Clara, and I don't think that's true. I've seen other places where the traffic is worse, where the LOS level is F, and we've approved much bigger projects. So let's try to apply the same standard throughout the community, and not just make an exception for this corner of Santa Clara. I like this project because it retains a big portion of the retail space that we're losing. The developer is offering to set up a community hub, and it also meets the general plan, which is an important issue. We need senior housing. 60% of our residents are already renters, And some people have mentioned that, the rent may be too high, who's going to sell their homes to move into these properties? Well, let's not just put everybody in the city in the same bracket. There are going to be needs for this type of housing. And I also am concerned about the NIMBYism. We'd like to make sure that the projects that we approve will serve everybody in the community, and to deny projects just because we want to serve some residents in the community. I'd also like to mention that the lawsuit that a developer in Los Gatos tried to bring because the city of Los Gatos denied a project that met all the general plan requirements, and yet it was denied because of opposition from some residents. They ended up approving that project, but there's also a California legislator who is trying to pass a new law to allow a development to proceed if they meet all the conditions in the general plan. So I think there's a rising concern in California about the lack of housing, and this is an opportunity for us to do something about it. Lastly, we talked about monitoring parking, and I'd like the developer to consider adding a sensor to each parking spot so that instead of doing a manual, time-consuming, expensive survey, you can keep monitor the parking situation in real time and adjust the parking space that you offer to residents as needed. And I'd also like to see the free VTA pass added for all residents for not just 1 month, but perhaps in perpetuity. Because it sounds like it's not going to add to a huge cost to the property management company. So those are my comments. Do we have a motion?
Let the applicant respond to some of our amendments.
That's a good idea. Okay, so let's see now. I made suggestions of parking sensor and free BTA pass. Were there other suggestions that were made that we need to ask the developer to respond?
When you review of the transit management after the first year of operation?
Yeah, and I was actually talking about more frequently doing the survey regarding senior housing compliance.
Okay.
And there was removal of parking, which I think they already agreed to on El Camino.
El Camino.
Okay, so parking sensor, free BTA pass, senior housing survey. Those are the 3 issues? Okay,
Can I make one? I have an idea that I didn't bring it up because I didn't think we were doing the VTA, but I think people tend to take whatever's free just for the sake of having it. I think that's why people, health insurance companies have copays. I think we should have some sort of, really small level, like $5 or $10 that the resident has to pay, so that they're not just saying, yeah, I'll take the pass. And that way they actually are using it.
Thank you. Okay,
And,
BTA with copay.
And Madam Chair, could I also ask for just a bit of clarification? I think Commissioner Reinhardt asked about the number of EV parking spaces earlier. The condition as drafted is for 7 residential turnkey spaces and 3 pre-wired, and 1 commercial turnkey space and 3 pre-wired. And I think she said 25 spaces, but I wasn't clear on the breakdown. And so that we can draft the condition correctly, could you ask what's the breakdown on EV spaces? How many turnkey, how many pre-wired?
Space breakdown, okay. Thank you. Okay.
I guess I would say that since the VTA, Commissioner Reinhardt, since the VTA prices might change over time, we might say like a 90% subsidy or a 80% subsidy.
Thank you.
I'd like to also clarify for Steve Kelly, Commissioner Kelly, the annual reporting, although the traffic study reads 3 years for the reporting, condition C21 in the conditions of approval that we added is an annual right after the operations of the building. So it reads basically the developer prepared a transportation demand management plan to reduce the vehicle. The development must reduce, I'm sorry, C22. Each calendar year following final occupancy of the building, an annual review of the TDM plan shall be completed by a qualified third-party consultant, and there's other provisions. Annually.
Right, it's annual, but
And then
we wanted to add the parking report on top of that.
Oh, and annual parking report?
Yeah, to the TDM.
Sorry
That's
about
what we wanted.
Okay.
Okay, TDM plus annual parking. Okay,
That's a
would the
parking
applicant
survey.
like to come up and address these questions?
So I think I,
Okay, the first one is, let's start with the TDM, oh, no, the EV space breakdown.
so it's a total of 25 stalls, and it's 20 in the residential and 5 in the commercial, and there'll be 1 turnkey in the commercial and 11 turnkey in the residential. I think, did I say that right?
So 11 out of 20 and 1 out of
It's on
5.
my slide. Oh, my slide's okay. Yeah, I think it's 11. Sorry. You found the slide, okay, thank you.
It's exactly what you said.
11, okay, I was right, it's right here. Yeah, 11, yeah, 11 installed. So 10 residential, 1 commercial. So a total of 11 installed, and then prep for 14, and of which 10 would be residential and 4 would be retail.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the next question is annual parking reporting on top of annual TDM reporting.
We can do that.
Okay. And the next question, senior housing survey, once a year instead of every 2 years?
I'd like just at least report back to us at least the first year.
Oh, okay, so reporting back after 1 year,
Which was that?
the senior housing survey.
Oh, I'd like to see that more frequently, actually, 6 months.
6 months.
I think that would be difficult to manage, I think.
The lease is 1 year.
I think we could agree to once a year, but I would like to at least have a horizon on that, just.
Right, so what
operational.
Commissioner Kelly is suggesting is reporting after first year and then once every 2 years subsequently?
Yeah, that's fine.
Would that be?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, okay, the next question. Free VTA pass for all residents on an ongoing basis with 80% or 90% subsidy? Or an 80% or 90% subsidy on VTA pass for all residents on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, I think we'd like to refer back to the TDM plan. I'm fine to increase it to, understanding the ramp-up time. Maybe we could do 3 months or even 6 months. But just to take that on in perpetuity, I'm a little uncomfortable with that because we already have the mechanism of the TDM plan.
Okay, so 6 months initially, and then consider additional subsidy?
Yeah, if
you need to go to the
if we're not
second-
meeting our goals, like I said, it's going to happen.
Okay.
But we might find just people walk around too. I mean, we don't know until the thing's operating, so that's why I'm a
Right.
little bit hesitant on that.
Okay, so 6 months?
Yeah.
Okay, 6 months.
So make a recommendation otherwise, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I guess adding sensor to each parking space so that you can keep better track of?
So that one, I would just ask that it allow us time to research,
Okay.
because I really have no idea if they are, yeah, that was something I've never had any experience with, so I'd like to be able to report back on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so do we?
Oh, the parking.
Parking on El Camino.
So again, I think I don't have, I mean, I can say fine, but it's really in the traffic department's courts, because we, and just to clarify, we requested even a resident loading location, and they didn't let us do that, so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have a motion? Would somebody like to craft a motion?
And may I request 2 two motions. The first on the environmental.
Oh,
All the
yes.
additional conditions you
Okay.
just mentioned would be appropriate in the rezone, not the
Thank you.
environmental.
Thank you. Okay, so let's do the first one. The first recommendation from the staff. Would anyone like to make a motion on the first recommendation? Which is to adopt the MND and MNRP.
And exactly what are we doing there? I'm not entirely sure how you,
So
Recommending to adopt the mitigated negative declaration and mitigated monitoring and reporting program.
Any seconds?
second?
Okay, any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, okay.
You want me to read the next one?
Commissioner Chahal dissenting. Okay, so ayes carry it. Okay, second motion.
Approve the rezone from community commercial CC to planned development BD to allow the development of a 4-story senior mixed-use development with 17,909 square feet of commercial floor area and 151 senior apartment units.
And to clarify, to recommend to the city council
The city council.
that it approve the rezone from blah, blah, blah.
With the following conditions.
Well,
With the changes
Conditions.
that we suggested.
do we need to, it'd be
Do
good
do
to
you want
hear
me to
what those
list
are
the
exactly.
following, you want me to list the conditions?
If you have those, that'd be.
what conditions?
I can try, and you can
The
tell.
ones that we just talked about
But-
with the applicant.
Okay, but the developer already agreed to do them.
Well, I think we need
It's
to
a-
put
We
them
need to
in
include
as
them in the
conditions.
motion?
It's important for the record that we spell them out now that we're making the motion.
Okay,
I'm
all right.
sorry to belabor
So-
this.
Thank you. Would Commissioner Kelly like to list the conditions that are going to be attached to your recommendation?
Okay.
A motion to make the recommendation.
Commissioner O'Halloran, you wrote it down, correct?
Well, I can write down and we can go from there.
Okay.
I'd like to see a more, a annual survey of senior housing.
Okay.
Oh, to be more specific, I did keep the,
Okay,
if
okay,
I
sure.
may. Okay, so, let's see now. We are going to have annual parking report on top of annual TDM report. That's the first condition. The second condition is to have a senior housing survey after 1 year and every 2 years subsequently. The next item is 6 months of free BTA pass to all new residents. And I think that's it.
Should we say on, when you say all residents, should you say 2 a tenant or 2 per? I'm not sure how you'd. What's that? For the leaseholder.
For the leaseholder. Okay, thank you.
There was removing the parking on El Camino.
Disallowing any public parking or limiting?
Except for
The-
drop-off?
The general plan actually suggests, and I actually have the wording here somewhere, that we kind of encourage, here's what it says. 5.4.1-P13, encourage the retention of on-street parking, particularly adjacent to community mixed-use designated properties. So,
I'm not
so
sure. I thought that was the opposite of what we were saying.
that is the opposite. So we're recommending to city council that they, disregard this and disallow parking on El Camino. That's a recommendation to city council.
Except for drop-off?
No, well, actually, the traffic department didn't want to have drop-off on El Camino. So just like in front of the villas, it says no stopping. So,
But is that within the purview of this motion?
it's a recommendation to council.
It's a recommendation.
Okay. All right, so I guess
It'll keep traffic
1,
moving.
2, Fourth item is no parking in front on the El Camino side of this property. Okay,
And then I also have in my notes the EV parking spaces updated in condition 21 to reflect the numbers Ms.
okay.
Breeze gave.
okay, and the update to the EV, number of EV spaces.
And finally, in the rezoning resolution itself, section 3C, the word homeownership will be changed to residential.
Oh, okay. All right, so 6 changes. Okay, so should I restate the motion?
I think we got it.
I think we got it.
Okay, all right, any seconds? Second. Okay, any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 1 dissenting, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Okay. Can I make a motion to excuse Brandon so he can go home to his baby boy?
All in favor?
Aye. Okay.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, should we take a 5-minute break? Yes, please. Okay, 5-minute break. We will reconvene at, I don't know what time it is.
That's for the history.
Okay, 10:30, we'll reconvene at 10:30. Oh, Steve already put it up there.
Was it stressful?
That's not bad. It's only 10:30.
Next time,
This is
use the
the
hammer.
worst we've done.
Hit him with the hammer.
Yeah.
It's like-
You liked it, huh?
I mean,
Yeah, that's positive. You ready? Look, hey, this is perfect. You guys make this quick. Oh.